Declare the meeting open to the public. Is any public to attend?
They shall file in now, Chair. There we are. Is it into the public stage now?
Okay, you're very welcome. Just to remind people in the public gallery if they keep their phones on silent or flight mode. The apologies, the committee has received an apology from Tom Buchanan. Any other apologies that people are aware of? Most everybody else is here. Yeah. Okay, the draft minutes, item 2, at page 5 in the pack. Are members content that that's accurate reflection of that?
Could be just one small clarification. I wasn't entirely sure if I needed to declare an interest or not in relation to the issue around the public appointments report, but the way it's phrased that I was involved in several of the appointments probably slightly misleading. I was involved in all of the appointments that relate to Dell, obviously. So just
Chair, we amended to that instead.
Fair enough, thank you. Just on chairperson business item 3, there's a revised agenda. There's an agenda item that's been tabled in hard copy for members to allow the inclusion of an SR, a statutory regulation, industrial training, construction industry order, Northern Ireland 2016. It's been inserted at item 11 in the revised agenda. It's one that we had considered previously, but just to get it dealt with. Are members content to the revised agenda? Yeah. Thank you. Just to inform members, over the summer it's normal practice for the committees to delegate authority to the chair and the deputy chair during periods of recess to submit views on releasing or withholding freedom of information and any non-routine contentious freedom of information requests received. The committee would be advised of any such requests and the views expressed by the chairperson and or deputy chairperson and the response issued by the Freedom of Information Unit at the first available meeting following the recess period. So it's the normal arrangements. Are people content for those to apply during the summer? Good. Thank you. Just a reminder, the strategic planning meeting that we've planned for ourselves to get our own work programme together on the Tuesday the 6th and Wednesday the 7th of September at the Armagh City Hotel. The draft itinerary is at point 3.1 on page 3 of the table pack for consideration. The strategic plan session will be on the afternoon of the 6th of September and the committee will hold a stakeholder dinner that evening in the Armagh City Hotel. The committee will also be in contact with final arrangements. It's important the members inform the committee if they're unable to attend, and members will also be contacted regarding whether or not they would want to make use of a bus from Parliament buildings. So if anybody has any queries on that, you can raise them now certainly, or talk to Peter. But it'd be important to know some certainty around the numbers attending that, and also transport arrangements.
Chair, the other thing I would just flag up is if you're aware we don't have your best contact details, can you please make sure Michael gets them before you leave today? So mobile number and the email address that's best to get you on, particularly for over the summer, if there's any details we need to get to you.
Sure, the planning bit then is going to be done on the Tuesday?
Yes, Tuesday afternoon, yeah.
We need to be there at it, really?
Yeah.
And then the others, a committee meeting then?
No, there won't be any committee meetings on the Tuesday.
Friday, Wednesday?
I think Wednesday some other committees will also have their strategy sessions. So if there's a clash, it would mean you wouldn't miss the strategy session, but if there's a clash with the two committees, which is probably unlikely because they'll all be Wednesday morning committees will meet at Wednesday morning, same as normal. But if there are any clashes, if members would let me know and we try and...
But for us it is a committee meeting on the Wednesday?
On the Wednesday, yes. Yeah. Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. So as I say, if people could let Peter know or any committee staff know over and make sure the contact details are there so we can firm up how many people are going. And there is an opportunity to visit a local firm as well.
Yes, as well, sure.
Item 4 is the briefing from Invest NI. And this is just the latest. Members will appreciate in a series of briefings we've been having from key component parts of the department. The session will be recorded and answered. So we, as I don't doubt, we'll be talking to Invest as time goes on. And we'll be able to make reference back to some of that as well as the overview document that had been provided to us in hard copy. So the briefing today is to focus on aims and objectives, customer model, programmes by theme, positioning of programmes and intervention principles, As I said, the hard copy of the kind of slide presentations in front of you, and there are papers in the pack. The clerk's memo is at page 14. There's a list of issues that they may wish to explore with Mr. Fitch at the end of the memo, and there's a written briefing from Invest NI at page 18. There's also Ernst & Young's attractiveness survey at page 46, which looks at the performance in bringing in foreign direct investment compared to neighbouring regions and the fall off that there has been. A report on Brexit by the Economic Special Advisor to the former committee of the ETI, the Enterprise Trade and Investment, is at page 82. An Invest NI CEO statement at page 5 of the table pack on the result of the UK referendum on the EU, which was published in Invest NI's website. And the end of year results, page 2015, is at page 7 of the table pack as published on the Invest NI website, and the council area profiles as published on the Invest NI website is on page 13 to 45 of the table pack. So there's quite a lot of information there for members to get their heads around. And I know, no doubt that we will be dipping into some of these subjects, but obviously we'll be coming back to this as time goes on, particularly given some of the issues that are going to face Invest in the not too distant future. So Jeremy Fitch is the Managing Director of Business International and Invest NI. I'd like to welcome you to the meeting, and I understand that you can't make any comment on the outcome of the referendum, but I would find it a little bit strange if you're not able to tell us if Invest NI are shifting their gears somewhat to try and take account of a changing economic circumstance, certainly in terms of attracting inward investment. So I would be certainly hopeful that we'll be able to get some sense of you as to how Invest NI are gearing up to meet the challenges ahead. I understand the CEO is in the States at the moment, which is probably opportune because I'm sure there are a lot of questions arising out in the States from the outcome of the referendum. So I presume that would signal that Invest NI have had to step up a new level of activity in relation to all this, and I'd be hopeful that you'll be able to at least give us some sense of how that's happening, because I'm sure members are keen, as members of the public will be, to find out that there is some thinking and strategic planning going on ahead, particularly in terms of the key area of attracting investment and supporting the growth of the economy. So you're very welcome. We'll hear from you, and then I'm sure members will have questions.
Chair, would you prefer if I started with the overview of Invest Northern Ireland and then take it from there? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, fair enough.
So the presentation that you have is really just to give a little bit of background about Invest Northern Ireland and what our role is and how we go about our work. The first slide obviously sets the context for our work, which is the programme for government, and to grow the economy. So the next slide then is looking at our purpose. So the purpose is really to improve the Northern Ireland economy through business development, and we will work with businesses to help them to become more competitive, and by becoming more competitive they can then grow in international markets. The challenge that we face in Northern Ireland is we have a population of 1.8 million people, which is a small market. And therefore, if we want to grow our economy, we need to be looking at markets outside of Northern Ireland. And if we want our businesses to win contracts and work outside of Northern Ireland, then they need to be competitive. And in order to be competitive, they need to innovate, they need to invest in research and development, and they need to have the necessary skills to win that work. So that forms the basis of what we do. Our vision is to champion the growth of innovation and exports to build a local economy that competes globally. And our focus is very much on exports and external sales that will drive an increase in jobs. And to achieve that, then we will look at innovation, inward investment and entrepreneurship. The next slide just gives a little bit of a flavour of our achievements over the last programme for government, which there was considerable success by all involved. We had an initial target for jobs promoted of 25,000. The outturn was over 42,000. We had, and I know that the previous Enterprise Trade and Investment Committee was very keen on making a distinction between jobs promoted and jobs created. So one of the changes that has been introduced over the last while has been to provide better measurement, and it's very encouraging to see that we have, as a region, created over 34,000 jobs. So it's not just jobs promoted, it's jobs created as well. So those are new jobs in Northern Ireland that people have got up and gone to this morning. And for the projects that were signed over the last 12, 24 months, then there's still potential for those projects to be implemented and further jobs to be created. Investment in research and development. You can see the figures there with an initial target of 300 million and achieved nearly 600 million. And then exports, which is ultimately what we're trying to achieve, compared against the rest of the UK, the last 12 months has been very encouraging, where there's been an increase of 9.1% in exports, where the rest of the UK has actually seen a decline of 2.3%. So a lot of the metrics were moving in the right direction and a lot of room for encouragement. Having said that, no room for complacency and a lot of work is still to be done, particularly given some of the changes that we're going to face. The next slide just highlights some of those achievements that I've mentioned. So the 35,000 jobs created, £6 investment in Northern Ireland for every £1 of Invest NI support. Largest R&D investment was through Bombardier. That was for an nacelles project. That was separate to the C-Series. And then some significant other factors there as well, so including the number of new investors coming into Northern Ireland. The next slide, which details out local versus external support, is really put in to try and address some of the perceptions that people have of the work that we do. A lot of people perceive Invest Northern Ireland as just focused on international companies and trying to bring new companies into Northern Ireland, and we don't pay that much attention to the local businesses that are here. That is not actually the real situation. You'll see that the vast majority of our offers go to local businesses. We have an economy made up of small and medium-sized enterprises, and therefore the majority of our offers, over 90%, are going to local companies, and indeed the majority of our assistance, 60%, is going to local businesses. What tends to happen is the larger announcements tend to be internationally owned businesses, and therefore they get more of the media, and that causes that perception. But we've put that slide in specifically to highlight that we are very focused on supporting local business as well, but with the aim of encouraging that local business to become more competitive so it can compete in external markets and grow the economy. Next slide details out how we go about what we do in Invest Northern Ireland. So it's entitled Our Approach. And ultimately, if we want to grow our economy, there are two ways to do it. You take the existing businesses and help them to become more competitive, and you also encourage new starts. And the new starts can either be locally owned or they can be internationally owned. So the structure that we have as an organisation is through our regional offices. We're trying to identify opportunities for new local starts. Through our international offices, we're trying to identify new companies to come into Northern Ireland. And then with our sector teams, we are working with the businesses that are already here. Doesn't matter whether they're internationally owned or locally owned, but working with them to help them invest in skills and in innovation so that they can become more competitive and win those export sales. So we have three strands of growth, and then cross-cutting that are innovation and capability services that we offer. So we have a matrix structure. And the slide after, so which is called the support model, highlights the groups that we have within Invest Northern Ireland, the structure that we've adopted. So as I said, the regional business is looking out to the whole of the business community in Northern Ireland, saying, how can we encourage a greater spirit of entrepreneurship? How can we identify companies that have export potential and then bring those into an account managed and sector teams? And then on the other side, we have our international offices, which are trying to attract new investment into Northern Ireland. Then in a cross-cutting fashion, we have our Business Solutions Group. And the Business Solutions Group offers expertise, programs, advice in areas such as research and development, skills, innovation, property, access to finance, a whole range of solutions. And the client-facing groups, so that's the regional offices, the international offices, and the sector teams, will tap into that expertise as and when required. So that's the structure that we've adopted, and it's all about growing the economy. Slide after demonstrates how we break that down. So if we are trying to reach out to the wider business space, we've got to do that in a way that is most effective and efficient. So we have a one-to-many model where we're trying to identify those businesses, and that might be through seminars or through web-enabled services that we offer. And then as we identify those companies that offer the greatest return, then we will have a one-to-one account managed service for those businesses. And the structure then for the account managed businesses is there will be an account manager, a client executive or a client manager appointed, and that person is the face of Invest Northern Ireland, because Invest Northern Ireland is quite a large, complex organisation. We're not expecting the businesses to understand every aspect of it. That's the job of the client manager, or the account manager. And the job of the client manager and account manager is to understand the business, understand the opportunities that may exist, understand the issues or the impediments to growth, and then with the client executives, with his or her knowledge of Invest Northern Ireland, is to offer a solution to that client to say, how can we help you grow and how can we help you create more jobs? So that's the principle of the client teams, which is slide 10. So probably one of the biggest challenges, going on to slide 11, that we have is how do people know where to go to get whatever support or help or guidance or assistance that exists? And if you are, as a committee, and advising other people in the Assembly about the work of the economy and about the work of Invest Northern Ireland, we find some of the good questions to ask, or if it's your constituents, some of the good questions to ask is, where are you on the journey? Are you just looking at an idea? Have you got an idea but you're not sure if it will work? Have you already started? What steps are you looking at? Are you exporting or non-exporting, and what advice are you looking for? If we can help determine what those questions are, then that helps signpost people to where they're going to get the greatest assistance. And there's a couple of points that, if I could just highlight, if there's one or two things to remember from this presentation. We have set up what's called a business support team. So if anybody if you have a query or a question and you don't know where to go and find the answer, then the business support team is the starting point. They are set up specifically to provide advice and guidance and direction to general questions. And that's why I've put that specific slide in there with the telephone number and the email address. That is the go-to point for initial direction and signposting. The next slide highlights a website that we have that, in my view, is a fantastic resource for the whole of Northern Ireland. It is so good, actually, we have noticed when we look at the web traffic that lots of other regions are tapping into this because of the advice and the knowledge that they are able to get from it. So it's nibusinessinfo.co.uk. If you're not familiar with it, I would encourage you to take 15-20 minutes after this morning's meeting to have a look and see what is available. The type of things, I put a few slides in this just to highlight the range of information that is there. One thing I would encourage is to sign up and register for it, because as things change, it will prompt on what is coming up and what new advice is coming online. So if you are signed up to that, then you will be aware, and you can highlight that to either other Assembly members or constituents. But it does have a lot of guides and resource that you can tap into, and they're online. So whether it's about setting up a business, what you need to do, a guide on what you need to do before you start, or if you're going to plan, or if you are preparing a business plan, all of that information is available on nibusinessinfo.co.uk. There are sample templates, forms, letters, policies and checklists. They're all there, so if you're a small business and you have difficulty in knowing what is the right thing to do, particularly maybe on some HR issues, then there's advice on all of those particular points on that site. The next slide then highlights, even if you're preparing a business plan, there are Excel templates, for cash flow and for financial projections there as well. The small companies that wouldn't necessarily have the resource can just go on and take that information. So it's a fantastic resource available for all businesses across Northern Ireland. We just move on then and just give a brief overview, and this is always a challenge because there are a full range of programmes and support that's available to our businesses in Northern Ireland. And to try and convey it in 15 or 20 minutes is very difficult. So what I would like to do is try and maybe take a more strategic view and say, here's how we have organised those themes, those particular programmes. So first of all, it's by theme, and that's slide 13. So it's the next slide. I'm guessing that's slide 20, rather. So it says Invest NI programmes, and it's the themes that we've got are starting a business. So what programmes do we have to encourage businesses to start off? What programmes do we have to encourage businesses to grow? So whether that's grouped under skills development, leadership and coaching, business and marketing strategy, property and finance. If we want to encourage businesses to maximise efficiencies, how do we do that? So can we look at supply chain? Can we look at energy and waste? How can we encourage businesses to use technology more efficiently, ICT and e-business? And how can we encourage businesses to improve their own operations through efficiencies? We have what's called a productivity improvement team, which is one of our most successful teams. It doesn't offer any grants. It just goes in and offers advice to businesses on how they can set up their business more efficiently, both to manufacturing and to services. We get a 10-to-1 return on that particular team. So every £1 taxpayers in Northern Ireland are investing in that, we are getting a £10 return to businesses. And if you think about it, if we enable a business to save £100,000, a year, that's different from a one-off grant payment of £100,000. That will be £100,000 that they will be saving every year from then on. So even though it's not a grant, even though it's not a cash payment, it's a very, very valuable piece of support to our businesses, helping them to become more efficient. And as they become more efficient, that's back to the competitiveness. If they can become more competitive, they can win that business, win exports, and grow and create more jobs. We also look at product development. So we are looking at design, we're looking at intellectual property, we're looking at technical advice, working collaboratively, and then programmes to incentivise investment in research and development. I think at this point there are, for us in Invest Northern Ireland, two key areas are skills. Our most important asset in the economy are our people and the skills that we have. And it's important that we have a skills pipeline coming through. That's vitally, vitally important. And in addition then, how do we encourage our companies to innovate and invest more? And a lot of people think when we talk about innovation, it's just research and development. Research and development is part of it, but it's important to get across to the committee that this is broader than just R&D. Innovation is how do we make things better right across the board. And that can be very little things as well. The final theme that we have is international trade and investment. So how do we encourage our businesses to research export markets and identify opportunities there? How do we help them in their marketing and sales and the programmes that we have through trade visits and exhibitions, and then also our whole inward investment programme as well. So that gives the committee a flavour of the programmes that we have got by theme. Another way of looking at the programmes is by their strategic positioning, and the next slide is presented to show that. For example, on our innovation programmes. So you can have a small business who is just starting out, and the type of assistance that we would offer to that small business with regard to innovation could be very different to a large multinational. So strategically, as we look at the concept of innovation, then we want to make sure, as an economic development agency, that we have solutions right across the board in innovation for all of our client businesses and for businesses in Northern Ireland. So if it is a small business and they're just starting out and they have an idea, then we have a team of engineers within Invest Northern Ireland, our technical advisory unit, that can provide advice on products or services to those businesses, say, is this going to work? We have innovation vouchers which are available to use the local universities and colleges to provide a service then to businesses as they want to explore those particular ideas that they're developing. And then as you move up that particular escalator, as we call it, or innovation escalator, where at one end of the spectrum you have short-term reward, which is being driven by a market need, to the other end of the spectrum, which is where someone has a brilliant idea, technology. So how do you exploit the commercial results that could come from that? And right across that spectrum, then we're trying strategically to make sure that we've got some sort of program or some sort of solution for everything in between. So the types of things that we may have then are things like the knowledge transfer partnership, providing advice on intellectual property. So if businesses, if we're talking more and more about a knowledge economy and the value is in what people know, how do we protect that knowledge? Is it through patents? Is it through trademarks? Is it through copyrights? How do small businesses that don't have a huge amount of resource find out what the right thing to do? And there's a team in Invest Northern Ireland that can provide advice in those particular areas. And then as you move up that spectrum, we're encouraging businesses to invest in research and development. It's harder if you're a small business to do that collaboratively, but it's generally agreed that collaborative research is positive and a good thing, so we will provide a higher incentive for businesses to invest in collaborative research and development and to try and use the expertise that's within our universities. And then we have Proof of Concept, which is a programme which is taking the best ideas that are coming out of our universities and saying, is there a commercial dimension to this? And then the competence centres as well is also in that area. Now it can be quite a confusing area. And if companies are coming online, how do they find out what's appropriate to them? So first port of call, as I said, is that business support team. You can also use your client executive or client manager. But we also have online mechanisms and search facilities where companies will put in, say, this is the issue that they face, and then the web, that R&D escalator solution on that next slide, I think it's slide 22, will highlight where they need to go and what particular programme is relevant to them. So again, signposting and trying to identify where companies need to go. We similarly have the same idea on our access to finance solutions. So this is where we're trying to encourage a greater private sector investment in equity and loans and venture capital. So we have a whole range of access to finance and there on that particular slide as well. And then just in the interest of time, trade programs. Again, we can talk about how do we encourage businesses to explore export markets more and more. And the specific solution that will be available to companies will depend on where that individual company is on that journey. So if you're a small company starting out, it might just be trying to find out what is the market for my particular product. What geographic market is growing? Where are the opportunities? How do I contact those companies? Whereas the far end, it may be a large multinational, and what they're looking for is introduction to particular other large multinationals and buyers. And there will be a different solution right across that spectrum. So whether it's a non-exporter trying to encourage them to export, whether it's a first-time exporter and an experienced exporter, or maximising the experience of those who are already there. We have a different number of programmes, a different range of programmes according to where people are on that spectrum. So whether it's market research, we have a business information centre which has market reports, we have the export development service, then we look at market entry, where we will provide advice on export skills workshops, a trade advisory service, meet the buyer, then encouraging businesses actually to go into the market through trade missions, exhibitions and market visits, and then in-market support where we have teams of consultants that will that are there to facilitate introductions to buyers in the market. We'll also work in conjunction with UK Trade and Investment and with Enterprise Ireland in those areas. So that's a very high-level overview of what the types of services that Invest Northern Ireland offer. For the financial assistance that we offer, it's important that the committee understands the principles that we have. So we have been given responsibility with taxpayers' money to invest that wisely. And therefore, if we are going to take that money and invest it, there need to be strong principles and strong governance to make sure that those investments are as strong as possible. So the first thing that we will look at is the investment consistent with the programme for government? Is it consistent with the economic strategy? And is it consistent with Invest NI's corporate plan? So there is that cascade. We have the programme for government, economic strategy, Invest NI corporate plan. The corporate plan then gets split down into annual operating plans. The annual operating plans get split into divisional plans, and the divisional plans get split into job plans. So everybody knows what their role is and what they're doing. So if we are presented with an investment opportunity where we're saying, is this consistent with what the people of Northern Ireland want, as determined by the Assembly and the Executive? We then are looking at, is the project attractive? So does it focus on markets outside of Northern Ireland? Is this going to help grow our economy? Is it going to help create jobs? So is there a strategic focus on markets outside of Northern Ireland? Is there an innovation dimension to this project? Is it making things better? Is it helping us to become more competitive? Is it going to increase employment or value add? And is it of strategic importance to the sector? So we are presented with a case. We're looking for that strategic fit. We test the viability. So what we mean by testing viability is we're looking to see does this product actually work? Is there a management team that can deliver the project? Is there finance in place? Is there a market for the product? So will the project work? So we're testing the viability of that, and that's when we will do our own due diligence and look at those particular projects. That due diligence is proportionate to the size of the project. So if it's a smaller project, it's lighter. If it's a big investment, then there's a lot of time and effort spent in making sure that we're using taxpayers' money wisely. So that's viability. We also then look at what we call as additionality. And additionality basically is saying is, why is taxpayers' money required to make this happen? If the project was going to happen anyway, then we say let market forces prevail. But if taxpayers' money will make a difference, if it will buy an additional benefit, then that's an opportunity for us to intervene. So that's what we call additionality. What additional benefit are we buying? And that can be to make the project happen at all or not. So if a project isn't going to happen, can we make it happen? Additionality can also be used to make a project larger, to happen to a greater extent, or to make a project happen more quickly. Can we get the project to market faster? So all of those things would count as bringing additional benefit to Northern Ireland. So we've looked at, is there a strategic fit? Is it viable? Why is Invest NI money required? Why is government money required to make it happen? And then we're looking at, okay, if we're going to invest £100 or £100,000, does that project generate a positive return to the economy? And that's where we're looking at our economic efficiency test. So basically that's our return on investment. So if we're investing £100, is the economy getting more than £100 back? And that's where you get into issues like displacement. So if someone comes along to us and says, I want to create 50 jobs in Antrim, and all that project does is displace 50 jobs from Larne, then there's no net benefit to the economy. And we would be saying that's not good use of taxpayers' money in that particular instance. So you're looking at, probably offended someone by saying that. You can have a number of different examples there. So you're looking at the net benefit to the Northern Ireland economy overall, what is going to happen. So displacement is brought into that equation. So those are what we call the intervention principles, and they are applied each time that we will look at an investment. And then we enter into legal agreements, and those legal agreements will determine the conditions, any preconditions of the assistance being released. As far as possible, we try and make sure that the economic value is delivered first and then we pay the money afterwards. So the jobs are created, and then we pay the money after the jobs are created. And then we ask for those jobs to remain in place for a period of time, usually about 5 years. And if they don't remain in place for that 5 years, then we will look to claw back that money if possible. So that gives you an idea of the intervention principles. I'm conscious of time. I'm happy to take questions, but it's just to give a flavour and overview of our role and our structure.
Okay, thank you. We have a number of people seeking to ask questions. Just a few quick ones myself. The narrative for Invest NI over the last, and the department indeed over the last number of years, is that we have punched way above our weight. I think the suggestions only London has done better in terms of attracting foreign inward investment, but the Ernst Young report contradicts that. How do you explain that? Are there different measurements? And in the programme for government, there is one of the outcomes is that prosper through a strong, competitive, regionally balanced economy. I'm just wondering what Invest NI's contribution to regional balance is, because you seem to measure only inside Belfast and outside Belfast, which wouldn't achieve that type of regional balance, which the programme for government outcome is looking for. And just a brief question on slide 7 shows you 3 areas of work: entrepreneurial startups, existing client company growth, and new inward investment. What's the breakdown in investment from Invest NI across those 3 areas?
Okay. So first of all, with regard to FDI and the recent Ernst & Young report, the Ernst & Young report was done on there are 2 metrics that they have used. There are 2 issues with that. One is they have calculated that on the number of projects. So a project that created 1 job is equal to a project that created 100 jobs. So it's not, although it's indicative of what we're winning, it's not the best measure to give an overall indication of the total economic value that's being delivered. The second constraint with the particular report that Ernst & Young have given is that it will be done on the number of projects that have been announced. So they will be looking right across the board to say what projects have been announced and are in the public domain, and assessing the market share on that basis. When we look at the figures, probably the most reliable figures that we would refer to, on an annual basis we have to make submissions to UK Trade and Investment, and that will include all of the projects that we have done, including those that haven't yet been announced. So UK Trade and Investment will gather all of the figures from across the regions in, and they will gather all of the figures also on the quantum of the project, so not just the number of projects. And over the last number of years, on a per capita basis, so you've got, again, Northern Ireland's a small region, so on an absolute number, we're not going to be the top, but on a per capita basis, Northern Ireland has consistently been at the top of the pile. Not every year, but most years we would have been at the top of the pile, and that, Chairman, is why we have consistently said that we are punching above our weight for securing inward investment, that for the size of our population, we are getting the most inward investment within the UK. You asked then secondly about the regional balance. Our role is to promote Northern Ireland as an investment location, and once companies come here then they decide where the best place for them to go is. Equally, we will work with the existing client base that's here, so whether that's in Strabane or whether it's in Enniskillen or whether it's in Armagh, we will be working with those businesses to encourage them, as I said before, to innovate, to become more competitive, to invest in skills to help them grow. We will, and we publish the investment right across the board, whether it's council area or whether it's parliamentary constituency. We are fully aware and are supportive of how do we make sure that we can try and spread economic development right across Northern Ireland. We are committed to Northern Ireland in its entirety, not just Belfast, and we will encourage investment where we can to be right across the region. So that is something that we are clear about, and we will work with the committee, we will work with the Minister, we will work with the Executive to deliver that in the next programme for government. The final one was just the split between the regional office, the client group and the international office. I haven't got the figures with me on that, and it's sometimes I'm not sure how and we can get the figures for you, and we can send those through. But just to illustrate, if you're looking even at new inward investment or inward investment is bigger than just the brand new first-time investment we get to Northern Ireland. It can also be secured by expansions of internationally owned companies that are already here. So, for example, within our clients, within our sector teams, you may have companies like Terex that decide they're going to invest some more. So that would be internationally owned. That would still be foreign direct investment into Northern Ireland, but that would be included in our sector team investment. And so the FDI is getting split over two teams in that sense, if that makes sense. But yes, we can split down by the number of people employed in each of those teams and the budgets that they have. But then, for example, if we secure an inward, the meaning of that information, if we were to secure an inward investment through an international team, what will happen is once that company becomes established, it will transfer into the sector team, and the grant and the budget will actually be paid out through the sector team rather than the international team. So we'll happy to send through the information.
I'm interested in the split that you have for the other areas and entrepreneurial startup across the board. What's the split generally? Not because your regional office can do all those jobs, so that wouldn't necessarily give the split between the 3 areas of work. It's the 3 areas of work I'm interested in.
So they...
All of your regional offices may be involved in existing clients and they may be involved in new inward investment. So you have, in the previous pie charts, you've given some to emphasise that you spend a lot of money locally rather than internationally. So I'm interested in the division of that between entrepreneurial startup, existing client support and new inward investment. What's the overall split? Not the regional offices will all do each of those tasks, so that won't necessarily give you the split.
Rather than give a guess, I would like to come back to you on that, if that's okay.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you, Mervyn.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jeremy, for your presentation. Obviously, trying to give some consistency and a coordinated approach to all of that, given the complexities of it, are pretty challenging. What currently is the relationship between InvestNI, the regional officers and the enterprise agencies? Because we've come into a new era in terms of local government, and I have a particular concern in relation to how those new authorities will implement their proposals and their plans. And obviously we've seen economic plans in terms of Mid and East Antrim, and we've seen some work that the Causeway Coast and Glens are doing. But how is all of that going to be coordinated in a way that we don't duplicate, replicate, and we don't end up in a situation where we have a lot of time and effort being spent by various strands of government, whether it be through the department, through Invest, through the local councils, or through the enterprise agencies, and we become muddled in the way in which this is being done. And so where does all of that sit in terms of that coordinated approach? And secondly, obviously we're aware of the announcement or comments have been made by OFM, DFM that Invest would establish a liaison group with the business community in Northern Ireland to hear and to respond to the needs of the business community in what is a time of change, but also a great time of opportunity. Maybe if there was an update in relation to where that is, that would be appreciated.
Okay, so the issue that's being focused on first with the relationship with the councils, the big change there is the passing over, from our perspective, is the Regional Start initiative. So probably most familiarly known as the Go For It campaign. So that was previously run under Invest Northern Ireland as passing to the councils. We will work very closely as that gets passed across to the councils. The regional offices have a responsibility to work with the councils and make sure that goes smoothly, but also we are keen to provide the best possible advice that we can. There's a lot of information that Invest Northern Ireland has, and recently we've been providing detailed information on what's happening in each of the council areas, and my understanding is that that's been very favourably received. There is a lot that goes on. So I didn't give you this slide, but I have it with me. But basically, it maps out what is happening on the entrepreneurship ecosystem. So to make sure that there isn't an overlap, we need to identify what's happening in the first instance, and then who's got responsibility for each bit, and is there an overlap or is there duplication. So that is something that, as we work through this transition process, that there will be more work and continuing work done on. So it's vitally important that there is not confusion or overlap. And again, I go back to that business support team as an area where people can go to have clarity and to have direction, and to be signposted to where support is available. If I could pick up, Mervyn, on your second question, and appreciate you asking that too, because we are now in a period of uncertainty following the result of the referendum last week, and while the UK public has voted in favour of leaving the EU, it's clear that the change is not going to occur overnight. And the Prime Minister has indicated that Article 50 will not be triggered at least until the autumn. So what this does, it allows us to manage the change, manage the new relationships in a planned way, so that we can take a look at what is happening, what are the changes. Some of those we don't know what those changes will be at this particular point. But the first thing that we will be doing is, as you said, setting up this liaison group of business to understand what the immediate implications are to those businesses. Government agencies don't create jobs. Businesses create the jobs. We need to understand the challenges, the impediments that they face, what opportunities are there as well. So given that this change is now happening, we will be setting up that group. So it is, we have a dates set. We're looking at either the 18th or the 21st of July for that business liaison group that the First Minister announced in the Assembly on Monday to be set up. What we're also doing is we are asking each of those client executives over the next number of days to contact proactively their client companies, so we can get a good understanding of what is happening right across the region, what issues that they're facing, what problems are there, and that will allow us then to plan a response to the major issues that they are facing in the immediate term.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, just a couple of... Jeremy, thank you very much indeed for a comprehensive briefing on Invest Northern Ireland's many functions and processes. Thank you very much indeed. I think that would be a masterclass in sort of the civil service speak and how things should be done. I've got two sort of key questions. And obviously looking into the future, one of the things we need to know is how fit for purpose Invest NI is going forward. And I don't know if you have the figures on you at the moment, but have you done a comparison between your budget and staffing levels and those of UKTI's budget and staffing levels, Scottish Development International's budget and staffing levels, and also with the Welsh Development Agency? And I know you've already got figures, because I've heard Alistair talk about it before, about your relationships with Enterprise Ireland and the IDA. And I think it might be just useful, so if we were fully aware of how sort of fit for purpose Invest NI is ready, because we're going to have a very challenging time going forward. And I appreciate you mightn't have those figures here, but if you could, if we could get those figures sent through to the committee as soon as we can, I think that'd be quite useful. Okay. And on that as well, I would also like sort of comments on your relationship with UKTI, particularly in the fact that UKTI, which has a staff of 2,400, but has a budget of 243 million. Invest has got a budget of around about 207 million. You've got 750 staff, and is how we're getting the most bang for the buck of what we would need to do as well. And so that's those are just a sort of broad outline questions I would like some answers to as well, and sort of as quickly as you could, please. That would be very useful. Okay. But the second question I would have is particularly about sort of Alistair's comments he made when he talked about sort of what we're talking about, attractiveness of a place to do investment, base for research and development as a trading partner, remaining to provide the foundation on which to grow our economy in the future. We've already heard evidence in the committee here very clearly about the 500 or the 55 million black hole in the higher education budget, and the considerable concerns that have already been expressed by many companies on the diminution of the R&D base here in Northern Ireland. And I would like you to make a comment on that, because I hear from, we read in the press statements, we're going around saying, in some respects, everything rosies and everything is well. But as you well know, when you actually get these companies come here, and I've been here many times myself in this position, when you get the risk analysis people coming through, they look at the high price of energy, the problems with infrastructure, the issues with the universities, and actually, in many respects, the vice-chancellors of the universities are the key people in this. It's not the CEO of Invest or even our minister. It's that as well. Because you make some comments about what Invest is looking to do and try and sort of look to pushing us to improving our R&D base to make that work. But thank you very much indeed for your presentation.
Firstly, on the fit for purpose question, my response is look at our track record. I think we have had a fantastic track record over the last number of years, particularly the Assembly and the Executive set a programme for government. Within that, we are given specific targets. We have delivered big time on those targets. So I believe we have a team of people...
Jeremy, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be there, but the Assembly set those targets. One of the things that, of course, UKTI, Scottish Development International and the rest of it, they've benchmarked those targets against a wider set of criteria. They didn't set their own homework and then marked it. So I understand what you're saying, but it might be disingenuous of you to tell the committee that, you know, we set our own homework and we beat the benchmark. That's great. Anybody can set their own homework and beat the benchmark. It's what you're doing that's over and above and compared against other regions.
So yeah. Well, I would push back a little bit and say that we did set targets and the executive increased them, and therefore we didn't set the targets that we had ourselves. They were set for us, and we have a team of highly professional people that I have a huge regard for in Invest Northern Ireland that work very hard to deliver those targets. I think we have a fantastic business space in Northern Ireland. We put ourselves down enormously, but you look at what Northern Ireland is doing. So it's not just Invest Northern Ireland, it's the businesses that are delivering this too, but our role is to support them. So I would say, first of all, we have a track record of delivery. We have a track record of, as I said before, punching above our weight when you look at FDI, when you look at some of the investments that we have secured. What I find particularly encouraging is that those international companies that come here, very often they come here and they will set up a small unit to begin with. And they're really testing the market to say, can we trust you? Can we believe what you're saying? The vast majority, over 75%, come back and reinvest. You look at stories like Citigroup over the last 10 years and see how they've reinvested and brought new functions. You look at Game of Thrones, HBO and Game of Thrones, and how they've continued to come back and put more investment into Northern Ireland. You look at what Bombardier have done with the C-Series, which I know people are questioning. That is a fantastic engineering opportunity in what is a fantastic market opportunity too, and I think we should be encouraging Bombardier as much as we can, because what those guys have achieved is superb. So I'm going off at the tangent a little bit, but it's just I'm very proud of what has been done.
We're all proud of what Northern Ireland is doing. It's just how we do it better.
So your question then about how do we compare against other agencies? We have done those comparisons. We found, and we compared favourably. So the comparison of administration cost to budget, when we made those, we were the best within the British Isles when we did them. We did find that we're not necessarily comparing like with like. So you may have some businesses that have other responsibilities in urban regeneration, which we don't have. So it's hard to make that a like-for-like comparison and therefore understand, are we comparing the same thing? But overall, we felt that we were comparing well. We admit that there's always room to improve, and we're always continually looking to say, can we become more efficient? Can we become more effective? Are there better ways of doing things? And we have a Transform programme, which is looking internally at how do we provide a better service to the taxpayer and to our customers, but then better value to the taxpayer as well. But on those comparisons, now we haven't done them recently, but when they were done a few years ago, I was encouraged by how we compared. You asked about the relationship with UKTI. There are two aspects to that. One is on the trade side, so that's how do we encourage the businesses that are already here to sell more into the world, and that, I think the relationships there are very positive. It's much easier to work in cooperation with UKTI. Where it becomes a little bit more challenging, and we'll be honest about this, is if we have inward investment leads and UKTI are saying, can you share those leads with everybody, then we will sometimes be cautious about what we do. We've spent a lot of money from the Assembly to generate those leads, and we want to make sure that those are for the benefit of Northern Ireland. So we tend to find that all of the agencies across the UK tend to be a little bit more protective about that, but I think that's just human nature. But overall, we are committed to working with UKTI on a trade and inward investment perspective. On the Brexit point, and the attractiveness of Northern Ireland as a location. Even with the change that has happened in the political environment, there are a lot of Northern Ireland's attributes that stay the same from an attractiveness perspective. We've always said that. So Alistair, if I could just read in his comments, said Northern Ireland's a great place to do business with top 10 global business-friendly city. So we have a city in Belfast that is recognised within the top 10 in the world for being business-friendly. We have some of the most highly skilled people amidst a global shortage of talent. When I have done my work on inward investment, people have come and they consistently say they come to Northern Ireland to access the talent that we have here. It's the quality of the people that they can get here, and they come back for more. We can always do more. I would say that is probably one of the most important things that we need to ensure, that we have a skill supply right across the board, not just for inward investment, but in those sectors for growth. And that's why STEM subjects are so important, and I commend Stephen and the work that he did before, particularly with the software skills and things like that. Those are areas where we've grown, areas where we are world class, and there was a lot of great work done by Stephen's department previously in that area, and we hope that that will continue in the larger Department for the Economy. And I think it is really, really good that we have the colleges and the universities all in one department now, because we are, on a global basis, you talk about knowledge-based economies, and that's where the knowledge is. And we're talking, if we want to have jobs, it's about skills. So
I think, Jeremy, that's excellent. And I think, one of the things you might have to look at is maybe transferring some of the budget from Invest into the higher education sector, because that really addresses the R&D issue.
Well, I'll push back on that one as well.
I thought you might. I'd much rather have Alistair here having this conversation.
I would say, I would say that there may be other areas to select from, but if you do want to rob Peter to pay Paul, that's all I would say there.
Okay, thank you.
We've, I think it was 6 more, so if we could keep it moving along.
Yep.
Gordon Dunn.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks very much, Jeremy, and well done to Invest NI. And I think a number of us have been out on trade missions. We see the good work you do and how you do it, so keep it up. We are encouraged by the NI manufacturing exports, the increase. That is an increase on manufacturing here. Can you just clarify that? We have an increase of uplift of 9.1%.
Yeah, so
last year. That is manufacturing exports?
Yes, it is. So manufacturing exports in Northern Ireland have never been higher. And with 80,000 people now employed in manufacturing, which is the highest that it's been for the last 10 years. So even though we are getting mixed messages on manufacturing, and there's very sad news, obviously, at JTI and Michelin, and then some of the Bombardier announcements as well, that will still have to work through, and they can maybe impact some of the employment figures as we move forward over the next 12 to 24 months. There's still a lot to be encouraged about that in manufacturing that is going on, and those figures show an underlying increase in that activity. And even given some of those decreases that I've mentioned, the projects that we signed up in the last 12 to 24 months are promising another 3,500 jobs in manufacturing as well. So those jobs still have to come online too. So I think anyone who works in business knows that it is not easy. It is a hard grind, and it is not easy to win business in international marketplaces. And that's our role, is to help those businesses win that difficult work. So that's the role that we have, but we have a lot of skilled people, and I think we can. There's a lot we can take encouragement from as well.
Okay, a couple of other things then. You mentioned it partially, the need I've put down here to support local existing business. I think it's important to make sure investors are doing what they can to support existing business, making sure that it remains competitive. You've touched on it. I put a note here about energy, obviously the cost of energy. And there are other issues. Rates comes up all the time, and I know you're not directly responsible, but how you can supplement it in other ways, I think, is what's important, and how you can encourage in other ways, I think.
So the way that it works, Gordon, is that, as I said, we have the client executive or client manager. They manage that account. Their job is to understand the business, and we will use models like a business health check. We'll go into the business and we will have a look at the business and say, what are the issues that you face, what opportunities are there, and what impediments are there. From that, the client manager or client executive agrees with the company. Here's a range of solutions that we can provide to those particular issues. So it may be something to do with skills. Can we offer skills? It may be something to do with research and development, to develop a new product. It might be some marketing support to help to get into new export or trade, new trade areas. What the client executive does is work with and agrees with the business what are the priorities, and then we will provide a solution. So for those account managed businesses, we are tailoring a solution specific to those businesses through that toolbox of solutions and services that we have. So hopefully that answers the question of how we go about that.
The other point you made about Bombardier, I think we'd stress that the need to continue to support it. Huge employers, good employers doing an excellent job and support a lot of business,
and great opportunities in the
businesses.
supply chain as well there.
Correct, yeah, locally,
Absolutely.
especially in the Greater Belfast area. So you mentioned about the continued support you were given. What does that relate to?
Well, we will look. So we will. It can cover a range of areas. There are times where the ministerial team have been involved when they go on trade missions to help provide introductions, and that has been a fantastic support. It's a good example of devolution at work, where the ministers are able to go with companies and provide introductions at a level that would maybe be difficult sometimes for the businesses to get introductions. But we will look and work with Bombardier, particularly at research and development has probably been the area that we've worked mostly with them over recent years in developing new products. So it's not just necessarily about the C-Series wing, there are other projects that we would work with them on as well. So I mentioned the nacelles project that was one of our largest R&D projects in the last couple of years.
And that's looking at further development of
And broadening the range of products that they are offering.
Okay, changing the subject finally, Chair, Grade A office accommodation. I'm aware of the need for it, I'm aware of different projects being planned in Belfast. How is that progressing, and are we meeting targets as planned?
So the challenge that we face is that there has not been a huge, given the downturn, there's not been a huge amount of investment in Grade A office accommodation. The supply, therefore, has been going down, whereas the demand has stayed level. That means that the stock of Grade A office accommodation has depleted, and there is a need for further investment. As a result of that, Invest Northern Ireland has announced its Grade A office accommodation programme. Last year we sought expressions of interest. We got 5 expressions of interest. We're continuing to pursue 3 of those. And in the meantime, we are aware of other office projects which are being discussed and being seeking planning permission, which should help address those particular issues as well. We don't feel that we have lost any projects as a result, but we feel we could be in a better position if we had more stock, a greater variety of stock, to be able to show potential investors when they come in. But I think there is good activity happening in that area at the moment. So I think everything that is being done from our perspective, from that perspective.
Thanks, Chairman. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just in relation to new international companies coming into Northern Ireland, do you give them, or are you asked for, advice on location? And what sort of criteria do you use for giving that advice? I mean, I wonder, is there sort of a policy or a statistically based bias towards certain areas? Because I ask that because North Down is particularly light on manufacturing jobs, and there would be a perception there, and it may only be a perception, that that area is neglected by Invest Northern Ireland when it comes to new manufacturing jobs. And do you proactively highlight or give a heads up to local companies about trading and supply opportunities when a new international company does come into Northern Ireland, just to bring added value to the investment? And the last question is your role solely in new job creation, or do you have a role to play when, for instance, in North Antrim, where we've had all the unfortunate job losses there, particularly in the manufacturing, do you have a role in trying to salvage those jobs, to go in and discuss with the company what are the trading circumstances, or what are the reasons why they have decided to close down a factory in Northern Ireland? Do you have a role in that, in trying to salvage that?
Okay, the first question just on regional promotion. When a new company comes to Northern Ireland, they are looking for a solution to a problem that they face. As I said before, the majority of companies that are coming to Northern Ireland as brand new inward investments are looking for skills. The skills that they can't find anywhere else in the world, or they're struggling to find anywhere else in the world. So when they come to Northern Ireland, they want to be satisfied that they can get the skills that will meet their needs. So what they will ask is they will say, where is the supply of people? What are the universities producing? And they will ask, the type of people that they would meet on an inward visit will be, they will meet with us, obviously, and we can give them an indication of what's happening in those particular sectors, what's already there, what skills are there. They will look at what the universities are producing. They will talk to existing investors about what's already there. But what they are keenest is satisfying themselves is, if we come here, will we be able to fill the jobs that we're creating? So we will present them with that information, and on that basis, then they will say, well, we would like to visit these particular areas. So we are not promoting one particular part of Northern Ireland over the other. We will give them the information, and on that information they will decide. With regard to manufacturing inward investment, again, the vast majority of new greenfield inward investment over the last 10 years has been on the services side. Where we have had success for international investment in manufacturing has been to take the companies that are here and encouraging them to grow. What has happened sometimes is that we've had local companies that have been bought out, and that's encouraged international investment that way. And again, positively for Northern Ireland is when those companies have been bought out, there is always a risk they could close it down and consolidate it somewhere else, or they can invest more in what's already here. And I would say probably 4 times out of 5, maybe 9 times out of 10, they, rather than consolidate and move the jobs off, they will take what they've got in Northern Ireland and grow it. So that's a positive. The challenge, Alan, that we face there is if they buy something, it's already located in that particular area. So again, we don't have any control over the location of that particular investment. When a new company comes in, you asked about the supply chain. Yes, of course, if there's a supply opportunity, we'll be looking around all of our existing clients to saying, can we provide introductions? And that's why there's value in the sector teams that we have. And we have people specifically in Invest Northern Ireland are looking at supply chain and how do we improve that. And an area that we've had a lot of success in is in the aerospace sector. The final question you asked was just about if a company is in difficulties and the jobs are under threat, do we have a role? Absolutely, to try and protect those jobs. So if a company sometimes comes to us and says, look, we have a challenge here and there may be a number of jobs that are going to be lost, our first pushback to them will be to say, well, is there another opportunity within your wider corporation that instead of those jobs going, could you replace them with somewhere else? So for example, when Caterpillar announced some redundancies a few years ago, we were able to persuade Caterpillar to bring new functions into Northern Ireland. So instead of just doing gensets, they will now do other manufacturing functions as well. So yes, that would be a starting point. So A, is there something within the wider corporate group that we can bring into? If not, are there ways that we can encourage them to replace some of those sales through increased exports in other areas? Or is there something in our pipeline that is looking for that skills base that is there and may pick up on those skills, and we can provide an introduction to it? So that's just a flavour of the type of things that we would work on. A lot of that is happening in the background because you can't talk about that in public because people would lose confidence in what's happening. So that's happening all of the time. Well, not all of the time, but when it does happen, it's an area that we would be addressing.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. Welcome to Jeremy. Probably two easier questions and one probably very hard question. In terms of the easier ones, I'll just get them all in one go. First of all, under the new Consolidated Department, we still have a number of different bodies who are involved in contact with businesses. You've got yourselves, the colleges and others, and district councils. What opportunities do you see to consolidate the contact functions to make sure there's the most efficient and effective signposting as possible for any business that contacts with any particular point to go to the most appropriate agency and indeed person to give them advice? The second thing is, could you possibly reflect on what we've seen in terms of the evolution of the nature of the type of inward investments that we've seen over the past number of years? Where quite clearly we've been moving from a situation where we've been competing historically based upon purely low cost to now competing on skills, but skills on a more competitive cost basis than some other areas. And in conjunction with that, the change that we're seeing in terms of the GVA and average salary levels that we've seen in terms of jobs. We're not simply talking here about contact centres or call centres. We're talking sometimes salary levels in the high 30s now in terms of some of the more recent investments. And probably the third thing, which probably no surprise, is the implications around Brexit. And I appreciate, as a civil servant, you're constrained in terms of any political comment, either on Brexit or indeed where executive now goes on corporation tax. But to what extent do we potentially need to remodel the assumptions that we have had? And I appreciate life goes on, and Northern Ireland has to remain an investment location, and we have to sell Northern Ireland to the rest of the world. But even with corporation tax, with UK remaining as part of the EU, there would have been a change in the nature of the type of investments that we would have been seeking based around the incentive for profit centres as opposed to business support. Access to markets is a big issue for some companies, less so for others. We have uncertainty over access to markets. We maybe need to beef up more our skills arguments even more to compensate perhaps for the access to markets and shift the focus. So to what extent do we need to take our pause or to use the period where there is that uncertainty working out exactly what our access is going to be to the European market to reassess our models and what type of business in particular InvestNI will be pitching to?
Okay, so with regard to the new department, you're absolutely right. There are a number of areas where employers will have touch points with that department, and they won't all be in the same place. That's an area that we are very keen that there is coordination on. It's identified immediately, and there are people that you will know well, such as Michelle Bell and Niall Casey from our side, that are working on that as a priority to make sure that if an employer has a touch point on apprenticeships or has with InvestNI or whatever area, or through the universities, whatever area it is, that we can be as coordinated as possible. So that has been identified and addressed. Second question was just on the evolution of FDI. So it depends how far back you want to go. Over the last 20 years, it's been very much a move for greenfield FDI from manufacturing to services. Where we've had a lot of success has been initially in software, then with companies like Allstate, Liberty IT, Citigroup, Chicago Mercantile Exchange all coming in. We have seen a huge level of expertise being built up in Northern Ireland for financial services technology. And the quality of those jobs is superb for us, and an area where we have demonstrated again and again we have a competitive advantage, and we offer a really top-notch solution. What some of those financial services businesses have done is coming into Northern Ireland, particularly Citi led the way in this, was also to identify the opportunity for legal and compliance. So Citi, by bringing in legal and compliance, and they worked very closely with us, allowed us to bring in Allen & Overy, Herbert Smith Freehills, Baker McKenzie, Axiom, to name a few companies that are there. So Legal compliance is a new sector that we have, and we have, again, a supply of skills on that to allow us to do that. And then the professional services companies and accountancy firms such as EY, PwC and Deloitte all noticed that model as well, and have noticed and have put expansion plans for the UK in Northern Ireland too. So that, it gives you an indication of that's where we've had a lot of success. We've had some success also in smaller businesses coming in. So if you look at the size of our FDI, smaller companies looking for a foothold, say, in the UK market. I met with one business yesterday. They were asked the specific question by their staff: is did you come to Europe? Did you come to Northern Ireland to access the European market? And the answer they gave to us was quite interesting. They said, yes, we did, but primarily we came to service the UK market. That's where they identified the opportunity first. So from that perspective, Brexit was not a major issue for them. But it highlights, it shows you where there is an evolution of some of the focus that we've had on inward investment. I would come back as well on this professional services and services. A lot of people say that contact centres are lower quality jobs. It all depends on how you define a good job, and I know there's comments on this in the new programme for government, and I would encourage the committee to look at a good job is relative to the sector you're in, it's relative to where you are in your career, it may be relative to where you are in Northern Ireland. The contact centre jobs, in my opinion, are very valuable to our economy because they provide a stepping stone for people who are not in work to get a job for the first time. They provide an opportunity for people to get customer service skills, to get keyboard skills, skills that are transferable further down the line. They provide an opportunity to move up the value chain as well. Because of the nature of those jobs and the flexibility that is required by employers for part-time working, they also allow us to address the issue of economically inactive. So there's a lot of people who are economically inactive for particular reasons, but if they are able to get part-time jobs, they are able to be productive for our economy. So I would encourage the committee to, when people say about contact centre jobs, do not write them off. They have a valuable role to play in our economy as we move forward, right across the board. And some contact centre jobs can be high paying as well. If you're offering technical advice, then there's some of those jobs can be in over 30,000 or whatever. So there's a number of good quality jobs there. Final question. I'm sorry for just conscious of time. With regard to corporation tax and the implications of Brexit, I think you're absolutely right. I think we will need to look at there are so many unknowns at the moment. What the impact will be going forward, and we will need to continue to assess that. What I would say as in corporation tax is that if we want to have a step change in Northern Ireland, we need to look at doing things differently. If we always do the same thing, we're always going to get the same results. And the value to us of corporation tax is it's a lever. It's changing the tools and the levers that we have to drive significant change in Northern Ireland. And in a nutshell, what that does is where we have been competitive in the past is to secure cost centres. So that means a business that is setting up, and they can set up a manufacturing function or they can set up a cost centre where the profit isn't being taken. If there's a profit play, we tend to be less competitive against the Republic of Ireland. They have a 12.5%. When we target our markets, we are targeting those mobile projects that can be established as a cost centre. What corporation tax allows us to do is basically play in the bigger market. It allows us to play where there is profit as well, and Brexit doesn't impact that particular element. So that's a truth that remains the same. So on that basis, my belief is we should continue to push ahead with trying to get corporation tax because it allows us to access a bigger market for what we're trying to do and grow the economy in Northern Ireland.
Okay, thank you. Sinead?
Thank you. And my 5 points have become 4, Mr. Parry. But firstly, the committee had the privilege last week of being at Catalyst Inc. And I will relay some of the good wishes and kind words that were expressed to myself and other members of the committee. There were quite ingenious type businesses down there, and they were singing the praises of the Invest NI help that they had. So
thank you.
Congratulations on that and well done. Secondly, I find it very hard to glance over this Ernst & Young attractiveness report. Let's say, to put it nicely, we're not very attractive when I look at the report and some of the statistics in it. And I take your point where you make your measurement per capita. This report certainly doesn't do that. But would you share my concern that potential foreign direct investors looking at these type of leading industry reports would be significantly put off by coming to somewhere like Northern Ireland? And do you have any way of counteracting that type of message where we say the percentage from 2014 to 15 in projects recorded down 62% for Northern Ireland? And it goes on, you know, and there's no danger of us falling down any of these league tables because we're quite firmly at the bottom of each of them. Moving on to my third point then, and I appreciate your Brexit issue, and we'll not go into the bigger political picture, but I know you do have an international platform, and at this stage would you foresee even the possibility, I understand you have Brussels, an office in Brussels, is that likely to continue, or is there even a question mark over it? Is there any likelihood of that in terms of your resources, that closing? My fourth point then is I'm eager to know or understand better this new relationship and this closeness with Tourism NI. Coming from South Down, I would like to see, you know, the two perhaps gel together, and I know particularly from South Down that the tourism industry is an economic pathway that has yet to be tapped into, and I'd be particularly keen to know your thoughts on that.
Okay. Yeah, first of all, on the EY attractiveness report, if any report comes out like that, it is of concern to us, because people will read it and can people make decisions based on the information contained within it. We will be reflecting back to EY our concerns about the way that was presented, and to say, is this a fair way? Because it does have an impact on what we do. Perceptions become reality. For people, and for a long time we had a big challenge in Northern Ireland in promoting the region as an investment location because of the perception that we had, and the way that we dealt with that was simply to get people to come and visit.
Unfortunately, why invested here? The irony of the situation.
Well, exactly, and a fantastic investment too. So we will be reflecting back to EY the difficulties that a report like that causes. You're absolutely right. You will have location consultants that will be advising their clients, and they will look at information like that.
But Jeremy, didn't we use EY's data beforehand and say how good we were?
But in those cases, we of course we did.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but at the same time, I would add that we did say that it was in the UKTI figures as well, and the FT, Financial Times, FDI benchmarking. So we will always use a range of figures, and as I said before, I would go back to the UKTI ones, because that includes all of the projects. What Financial Times FDI benchmarking uses and what EY uses are simply the projects that have been announced. There are some projects that we have secured that are not yet announced for whatever reason, and some companies don't want big fanfares that are announced as well. So they're basing that on incomplete data. But if EY come out and say that we are the best in the UK or whatever, of course we'll use that again on the perception issue. You asked just about the international platform. It's really too early to say anything about implications for a Brussels office. My view on that is that we will want to be as close to European partners as we possibly can, because we want to continue the trade links that are there. On the European issue, probably one of the first challenges that we faced was the staff saying, if we have an agreement for a research and development programme that is funded by ERDF, do we continue to write business? Was there any doubt on that? So over the weekend, we sought answers on that. And we will, and so it is absolutely clear we will be continuing to write business until there's any change in those programmes. So that's the decision that's been taken. That's coming from right across Europe, and that's the way that we should be doing business. So if there's any doubt for people as they bring projects forward, we are continuing to run those programmes. So I would say the same for Brussels. It's business as usual in that sense. With regard to the relationship with Tourism NI, we enjoy a very good relationship with Tourism NI. I know they're presenting next. They are just become our neighbours in the same building, and we hope that will facilitate closer working relationships as well. But there's a whole range of things that we're working together on. Particularly, we would tend to Invest NI looks after hotel investment projects, and anytime we're doing investment projects in that area, we will be consulting with Tourism NI. You look at the year of food and drink, and we're working very closely with Tourism NI between our food team and Tourism NI on promoting Northern Ireland as a location for that. Even on things like, as I mentioned before, HBO, Game of Thrones, fantastic opportunity to promote Northern Ireland as a tourism location. So there are lots of things that we can work closely together, and we are very open to continue to develop those relationships.
Gordon Lyons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Jeremy, for your presentation, and congratulations on all the successes that you have enjoyed, and congratulations also on not letting Steve get away with too much there. But on a serious note, when you set out to create 20,000 jobs, when the executive bumps that up to 25 and you deliver 40, I think by any measure that's something that's very positive. We've obviously looked at some of these figures and how there's been a drop-off in the last year. Invest NI have explained that. You've obviously made a few comments on that, but it's also been explained that there was a rush in the 2014-15 year by some companies perhaps to accelerate investment ahead of the changes to the EU state aid rules. Alistair Hamilton has already said that I think excited was the word he had used, about the potential opportunities that come from Brexit, first of all in terms of state aid rules no longer applying to us. Could you comment perhaps on that and what possibilities you think there are there in the future? And also, if we just get this question in as well, we obviously have had a number of countries that have come out over the last number of days, less than a week after the referendum, that have made indications that they'd like trade agreements with us: South Korea, Australia, Canada, New Zealand. I think last night even the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives. So I think that although there will be challenges with Brexit, there is a number of opportunities there for us as well. How can Invest NI best exploit those as we move forward?
First of all, Gordon, thank you for the kind comments. It is difficult for me to provide a particular comment on the pros or cons of Brexit. When we discussed this at board level before the referendum, and even as an executive leadership team within Invest Northern Ireland, there was very strong consensus that our role is simply, whatever the result of the referendum, that we will offer the best possible service to the businesses in Northern Ireland.
And just be clear, I'm not obviously asking you to make a comment, just we are where we are, how can we exploit those?
We remain committed to that. I think any change there's two sides to that, and I'm just stating facts here. A change can cause uncertainty. From some people will say that uncertainty means that could delay investment decisions, and that's just a reality. At the same time, change can cause potential for opportunity as well. And some of the things that Alistair has mentioned is, does that give us a chance to explore things that we couldn't otherwise have explored? So what does it mean for state aid? We don't know at this point in time. We are continuing to work on the basis that it's business as usual. I've just said that we'll continue to apply ERDF in the way that it was last week until we're notified of any change. But will there be changes further down the line? Yes, but we don't know what those are yet. So it's very hard to put a particular comment on that. Equally, could there be changes in procurement rules, and does that give a chance for the UK or Northern Ireland to say, are we as restricted by procurement rules? It's an area, I don't know the answer, but it's an area to be explored that we could look at, and there may be an opportunity there as well. So any changes brings potential, but then there's two sides, and the electorate of the UK, half of them decided it was this and half of them decided it was that, so it's very difficult for me to say whether one is better than the other.
Okay, Alec.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Jeremy, for your presentation earlier on there, and probably like everybody else, I just wanted to join in acknowledging the very good work that's been done over the last number of years, often in challenging times. But can I return to the whole question of the regional rebalancing, because it is a key part of the programme for government, and we are in a new mandate, and I do think that it would require probably a step change with the way in which Invest NI has been working. because part of the programme for government now is about rebalancing our economy here locally. And I know while you say, and you said earlier on, Jeremy, that your role, Invest NI role, is for the whole region, but it's actually for the whole region, but it's also to rebalance. So what I'm saying to yourself is that, I mean, I would like to hear, not today, obviously, this is just a briefing, but I would expect to be hearing a step change in terms of how you would go forward, like everybody else, in the common enterprise of rebalancing the economy. And it'd be interesting to know how, I mean, Stephen touched on this earlier, but how you would deepen relationships with local government, with Tourism NI, with all the various localised enterprise agencies, because it's not a chicken and egg situation we need here, but we need to identify where there needs to be a rebalance. Where is deprivation, areas where they do need greater support, where there's some tourism or where there's lack of employment opportunity. So, just wondering, I'm really just flagging it up to come back to another point that I do think, in terms of your own organisation's response to the programme for government consultation, I do believe there needs to be a step change in terms of, it wouldn't be good enough for them to say, we're here for the whole region. You have to be saying we are, but we also have to decentralise some of the job opportunities.
Thanks, Alex. I think you look at the draft programme for government, we prosper through a strong, competitive, regionally balanced economy. So it's there, and we are a delivery body within the Department for Economy. We report to the Minister, we report to this committee, we report to the Assembly, and our job is to implement what the people of Northern Ireland want through this Assembly. So that's what we will be working through, and how that happens, and that greater focus on regional imbalances over the next number of months through the consultation period for the programme for government, and then how the more detailed the detailed delivery of what that actually means, and then the economic strategy as well. So we expect that all of those details will be provided in those documents. So I'm not sure, it's not really appropriate for me to start to preempt all of that, Alex. That's really what I'm saying.
I think if SNI need to be a plan in mind to it,
and yes,
you also have to come up with solutions and how this will be delivered.
And we already are. So for example, last week at the board meeting of Invest Northern Ireland, the draft programme for government and those outcomes were discussed, and we will be looking at how do we put a response in the consultation to that, and then with a view to how do we deliver what the Assembly wants us to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That was comprehensive, but obviously there are many more questions flow from that. I don't doubt that back, and certainly in the new term, this is our last meeting before the recess, so in the new term we'll want to come back to a lot of these issues, but thanks for that today. And there are some questions, perhaps some information that we'd like to see in written form. The committee staff will be in touch,
okay,
just to try and secure that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to go. Yeah, fair enough. Just to advise members that we are considering asking the Minister to come in on the 21st of September, just after we come back, to deal with a number of the issues, some of which arose today in terms of the post-referendum issues, and generally speaking in terms of the department, the budget, the programme for government, economic and investment strategy. So are members content that we invite the Minister in on the 21st of September? Agreed? Okay, the next item is item 5, the briefing by Tourism NI. Again, just to highlight that there are 4 other departments of responsibility for policy areas which interact with tourism development, communities, agriculture, environment and rural affairs, infrastructure and finance. Since 2015, the councils have been responsible for local tourism, as well as a number of powers and functions which complement tourism development, namely planning, local economic development. There are 4 regional tourism partnerships: Visit Belfast, Visit Derry, Fermanagh Lakelands Tourism and Flavour of Tyrone. There are also a range of industry associations which represent the views of the sector: accommodation, activity, tourism, food and drink, skills and training and events. So people here, I've no need to tell now, regard tourism as a key economic driver, and particularly in some of the areas that were referenced. I noticed one of the regions that doesn't have any tourism partnership is the County South Down and Armagh area, but we'll see what the problem is there. So there is some information for members here at the clerk's memos at page 98, the written briefing from Tourism INI is at page 100. The research paper, page 112, looks at the issues and opportunities faced by our tourism industry and the possibilities for a tourism strategy. And we have John McGrillen, who's the Chief Executive of Tourism NI, and Laura McCarry, who's the Director of Product Development. So invite you, thank you for coming along. I'm sorry about the delay, but there's obviously quite a lot of issues to talk with Invest. And I just invite you to make some opening remarks, and then we'll get into some questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you very much for the invitation to come up and present to you. As you said, Chairman, I suppose it's fair to say that the tourism pitch is quite a crowded one. But to be clear about our role, we essentially see ourselves as the Tourism Development Authority for Northern Ireland. So our sort of nominal responsibilities are around product development, business development, and we have got responsibility for marketing the island, marketing Northern Ireland on the island of Ireland, both north and south. We also work very closely with Tourism Ireland Limited in terms of the work that they do in the international marketplace. And since the demise of the Northern Ireland Events Company, we have taken over the responsibility for the delivery of large-scale events here in Northern Ireland. So following on from, I suppose, Jeremy's presentation, we see tourism as being a key sector within the Northern Ireland economy. We very much see ourselves as being in the export business. Tourism is worth £750 million to the Northern Ireland economy, £500 million of which comes from overseas. So effectively what we do is we assist Northern Ireland businesses to sell their services in the international marketplace, and that service is then consumed here. So by any definition, that really is a tourism, is a sort of export industry that we're involved in. Currently, we as an organisation, we employ about 120 people, and we've got a budget of £19 million. The industry itself directly supports 43,000 jobs. Indirectly, it supports probably another 12,000 jobs. That's people who have got jobs because of work that gets done within the tourism sector. And it accounts for about 5.2% of the gross domestic product here in Northern Ireland. When we compare that with the Republic of Ireland, though, despite the fact that we've done quite well over the last decade, we are still lagging behind our competitor set. So if we look to the Republic of Scotland, our view would be that we are probably delivering about 50% of the potential that we have. And there's clear reasons for that, in terms of the legacy that we've come through and the impact of the image that Northern Ireland has had, and we have taken it some time to get over that. But, I mean, effectively, that's what we're working towards. I just want to say a few words about strategy in the first instance. As you know, we are working with the department to develop a new strategy not for Tourism NI, but for the tourism sector within Northern Ireland. It is very much based on the concept of sub-regional growth. The core objective of our work is to create economic activity, to create jobs. We would see a target probably sitting within that strategy of creating 12,000 jobs. But to do that, we will have to double the amount of business which we basically transact overseas. So we need to double overseas sales from £500 million to £1 billion over the next 10 years. We also have to protect the domestic market, because that is a core market that people are dependent upon and basically keeps everything buoyant in the I suppose the close season or the shoulder seasons. To put that into context, that requires a growth of about 6% per annum. You set that against the growth that we've experienced over the last 10 years, which has been about 4%. The projected growth moving forward of the global tourism industry is somewhere in the region of about 4%. So therefore, we're projecting a need to grow faster, and in order to do that, we need to steal bread from somebody else's table. We can't just simply grow alongside the growth of the industry and its sector. So to do that, we need to become more competitive. And to become more competitive, I would argue that we need to basically invest in the development of a product. We need to support industry in terms of their ability to develop their products and to sell their services overseas. And we also need to heavily engage in marketing, and I would say that that's not just ourselves, but ourselves and Tourism Ireland take it forward. Because we don't invest in marketing, we're never going to generate the sales. It's important that we recognise that we need to look at this from a visitor perspective. We're in a very competitive global market. People will only come here if we offer to them what it is that they're looking for. So we look at this from the perspective very much of the customer, of the consumer or the visitor. We have done a lot of work to identify what the typical visitor is who comes to Northern Ireland, what the typical visitor might be, and what the typical visitor might be looking for. And there are three key sectors that they fall into. People who are coming here really to experience our sort of culture and heritage. Others who will come for to get away from it all, basically explore the countryside and just get a break. And people who come for city breaks, and that's mainly focused on Derry and Belfast and Derry, London, Derry, as you might imagine. So that will be a critical element of our strategy, that focus on the visitor. We want this to be industry-led because we don't sell anything, Tourism Ireland don't sell anything, it's the businesses who sell. If it's not industry-led and they're not sort of driving this, those objectives will not be met. Our job, as we see it, as a government agency and working with all the other parts of government who support the tourism sector, is to enable the industry to deliver on those goals. It also has to be locally delivered. People come to experience a local product. They want to engage with local people. They want to experience the local heritage, the local culture. So our relationship with local government in terms of the delivery of all of this is absolutely critical. It's also important to say that what people want to, what they want to purchase now is an experience. It's not just about turning up and seeing something. It's about having that genuine experience of engaging with people and basically getting stories and having something that they can go back and tell people about when they get home. So we are doing a significant amount of work around that. And a key element of this strategy will be, I suppose, looking towards how do we develop our own equivalent here in Northern Ireland of the Wild Atlantic Way. In the south of Ireland, they have developed three major products: the Wild Atlantic Way, Ireland's Aim to East, Dublin, and currently, if you were to look at the map as it would be presented in the marketplace by Tourism Ireland, you will see, I suppose, Belfast, the Giant's Causeway. And our job, working with Tourism Ireland, as I see it, is to do what has been done down south in terms of making sure that the focus is not just being on Kerry and Galway, but how do we basically take the benefit of that and how do we spread that sub-regionally around Northern Ireland. So that, for us, that is, I suppose, the key task that we've got to undertake as we move forward. Just want to say something about our activity on the island of Ireland. Last year was a record year for visitor numbers to Northern Ireland. There has been substantial growth, up to 10% on sort of the visitor numbers coming from off the island of Ireland. We have had significant challenges here on the island. I would argue there are three main reasons for that. Firstly, exchange rate up until this weekend has not really been in our favour, and that's really been adjusted almost overnight because we had seen a 10% movement against us in terms of the movement of the euro. We also have a significant VAT differential between what our businesses have got to pay in Northern Ireland versus the Republic. And that impacts upon people, mostly, I would argue, in the border areas, where people are taking decisions either to stay on the other side of the border or have their wedding on the other side of the border or whatever, so it impacts upon border regions. And up until last year, 50% of our marketing activity in the Republic of Ireland and in Northern Ireland was funded from the European Regional Development Programme. The new programme does not include tourism. So we have lost somewhere in the region of about £2 million, or 50% plus of our marketing budget. And I suppose if you're not visible in the marketplace, if you're not in people's consciousness, they're less likely to depict, to select you as a place for their short break of their holiday. So we have significant challenges in that regard that we need to overcome. Another statistic is that probably 2/3 of people who live in the Republic of Ireland have never actually spent a night in Northern Ireland. So, whilst we see challenges, we also see it as a lucrative opportunity that we need to exploit. And we have set up a task force to look at this particular issue. I suppose highly experienced individuals from across the tourism world who will have an interest both in the Republic of Ireland and the North. They will have a good understanding of how the market works, but have got businesses in Northern Ireland and are keenly interested in its success. That group first met on the 6th of May. It meets again in early September. And in the shorter term, the board has set up a subgroup to look at tactically what we can do in order to address some of those issues in the shorter term. It meets on Friday for the first time, and I suppose exchange rate movements which have occurred over the weekend does present us with an opportunity in the short term, and we will want to look at how we will exploit that. To say a little bit about product development, we have, over the last sort of decade or so, we have invested about £100 million in developing product and supporting the development of products. So things, for example, like the Titanic Visitor Centre, the restoration of HMS Caroline. We were the major funder of the new conference centre at the Waterfront Hall. We've been heavily involved in investment in Derry/Londonderry, new Heritage Gateway in Fermanagh, Museum of Free Derry, the Railway Preservation Society site at Whitehead, Tracy Track down in the Mourne area. We're looking at other opportunities around the Mournes currently. We currently have somewhere in the region of about 90 projects which have been identified by councils who we've worked with for inclusion within the strategy and the new programme for government. We are working through those. Not all of those, I would imagine, are sort of going to come to fruition and would not all be affordable. But we will be looking to work with councils to identify those which will have the greatest potential to deliver tourism spend, and that will be included within our submission via the strategy to the Department for Inclusion with the Programme for Government. Just say a little bit about business and industry engagement. Jeremy mentioned the fact that the Invest team do some work mostly on the accommodation side. There are 7,000 businesses involved directly or indirectly in tourism in Northern Ireland. Most of those businesses are SMEs or micro enterprises. Most of them are independent upon each other, particularly at a geographical level, and their needs are often very different to those which would be the typical client of Invest NI. And when John Hunter sort of did his review, he did identify the fact that there was a significant need for the development of those businesses, and he proposed within that a tourism growth fund should be established in order to support those businesses. And in order to do that, we have been, I suppose, reshaping the organisation. I'm in post, I think, a year on Friday. And over that period of time, we have been restructuring how we go about our business. We are integrating our product development department, our industry development department, and we have 6 regional managers who are now out working directly with councils and industry at a regional level. We have 3 managers now located full-time with councils. Well, one, we're still sorting out a maternity issue, which has resulted in someone not being able to move as quickly as we would have liked, but we have somebody now full-time located in Newry with Newry and Mourne District Council. We will be doing the same with Causeway Coast and Glens. And we have someone, hopefully this week, we will have the accommodation sorted out, who will be working full-time in Fermanagh. And as and when we sort of free up staff by doing different things in different ways, we would like to continue on that journey of co-locating people with councils to develop those relationships and to basically bring the expertise that previously was somehow, somewhat locked within North Street, that is moved out to support those businesses. But there's been a sort of mantra around for years that our industry is less well developed. My argument would be that if we don't invest in developing the industry, it will always continue to be less well developed. And when we look and we compare the level of investment and the activity which Fáilte Ireland have been involved in recent years, we think we need to basically replicate that. And we have a relationship with Fáilte Ireland where we've been looking at the sorts of programmes that they have been taking forward to develop their industry, and they're more than willing to sort of share their experiences and hopefully share their materials with us as well, so that we will not have to reinvest on things that they have done. We worked extremely well, I've got to say, despite rumours of the past with Tourism Ireland. Similarly with Invest NI, Jeremy mentioned the fact that we've moved in. We've been in our new offices for 4 weeks. I think that gives us a huge opportunity. Invest NI are much larger. They have got resources which we don't have in terms of administrative support and grant administration, all that sort of stuff. So we're looking closely as to how we do that. We're also looking at how we can work much more closely on exploiting opportunities like the Open when it comes along in 2019, possibly doing something the Irish Open next year. How do we collectively work together to make sure that we're not just looking at tourists, but we're also bringing in potential investors and exploiting those opportunities collectively. I think Northern Ireland Screen becoming part of the new department also provides a great opportunity as well. Jeremy briefly mentioned the fact, the relationship around screen tourism. Laura's been working very closely with Northern Ireland Screen in that. We see real opportunities around not just Game of Thrones, but whatever might come out of that in the future. So our sense is that I suppose the construct of the new department, when you look at the work that we can do with Invest, what we can do with Northern Ireland Screen, and not least the fact that skills and training, which is a big element of us being able to deliver the service that the industry needs to deliver, being within the department, provides, I think, real opportunity for the future, and one I think that we're all sort of very keen to exploit.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a couple of questions myself. You mentioned the relationship between the Tourism Ireland, which is overarching promotion body.
Yeah.
The Fáilte Ireland is now the old board Fáilte, I presume.
Yes.
Yeah. There is a cumbersome relationship here in terms of promoting tourism across the island, and it's a consequence, I suppose, of our politics and the cumbersome way we do things. But what's, you're promoting the north and the south. Are they promoting the south up here? Is there a conflict there? Are at the very least a competitiveness there? Are people seen as competitors? How does that work when you're then part of the same overarching body which is promoting a whole lot internationally? How do things like Ireland's Ancient East happen, that it stops at Cooley essentially and doesn't exploit the nature of the County Down coast and the Antrim coast and up as far as the Giant's Causeway? That sort of points up a sense of disjoint. I'm just wondering, going forward, particularly in terms of the new programme for government and very challenging targets which will be set out, is there an opportunity to do those things better? And second question, just, it seems to me there's increasing events-based tourism which is attracting visitors, particularly on the island. Are you primarily encouraging investment through the Department of Economy, or are you also talking to the Department of Infrastructure, Department of DAERA, as it's now called, about supporting the likes of cycle trails, mountain paths, walkways, things which are actually attracting, in the first instance, local people out to become active, but also then have a significant tourism potential? And it seems to be across the island that these new greenways and things like that are having, for a relatively small investment, are actually stimulating a lot of activity, which will then draw in small and medium private enterprise investment into areas.
Yeah. I suppose the fact that there's some competition between us is inevitable. I mean, Tourism Ireland will see their job as maximising the spend in the Republic of Ireland. Our job is to maximise spend in Northern Ireland. So in some ways we compete, but in other ways we work collaboratively. So if we were to look at the relationship with Tourism Ireland in the first instance, basically they're selling the island of Ireland in the international marketplace. So what we need to do is to work collectively to ensure that what they have got is a, for want of a better word, a wholesome proposition that they can put. That when they are out selling the island, that they have got a strong proposition to make for Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. So we need to make sure that what we do complements what exists on the south in terms of how we present the island of Ireland as a brand in the international marketplace. The debates around what happened where sort of predates me, but I think what we are keen to do is to make sure that recognising the Wild Atlantic Way, we see an opportunity to almost join up with a similar proposition, sort of Carlingford Lough, right round to Lough Foyle and down into Fermanagh. And we can see those things as being complementary. And we've had conversations with Fáilte Ireland, for example, about, I suppose, positioning Derry as the gateway to both the Causeway Coastal Route and the Wild Atlantic Way, and there is no sort of issue around that, and there are areas where we can collaborate. So we see our task at this point in time is basically joining up, putting the proposition in place that sort of plugs that gap. But we are, I mean, we absolutely are, and we do compete, you know, and they do seek to attract people from Northern Ireland to go down south, and we seek to attract people from the south to come up, and they seek to retain the people they have down there, you know, at home as much as they can, you know. And I think to some extent, part of our challenge is there has been very significant investment in those products and in the marketing of those products that, you know, we, quite frankly, have not really been able to match. Going forward, the Programme for Government in the Republic, they have committed to investing £100 million in supporting, developing and promoting the Wild Atlantic Way. That's one product. Our budget is £19 million, as I said earlier. You know, so you know, over the next 5 years, they will be spending the same amount on one product that we currently have to cover all of our activity. So we do compete in that sense. But we do see the opportunity to collaborate. We collaborate on product, for example. So, you know, in terms of golf, typically people will come to the island of Ireland to play golf. They will want to explore, you know, the sort of marquee golf courses. So, you know, we would be collectively selling Royal Portrush with Royal County Down, with Royal Dublin, with Ballybunion. There is an opportunity, you know, on that sector. We do look to see how we can collaborate on things like business tourism, where the opportunities presents. And you know, a good example of where we're collaborating collectively is in the bid for the Rugby World Cup in 2023, which is an all-island bid, and we're all working very sort of collectively and collaboratively on that. So I think it's fair to say we work collaboratively, where it works to everybody's advantage, and we undoubtedly compete in other areas because that's just the nature of the business that we're in.
What about the investment then in investment in infrastructure, which is complementary to tourism? Are you talking to the other departments like infrastructure?
Yes, we do. We have, well, as an example, I'm meeting Chris Conway, who's Chief Exec of TransLink, on Friday morning for input into their strategy and their input into ours. We work very closely with the Department of Communities. Sort of Mervyn will know we're talking to what was DSD, now Department of Community, about how do we maximise the benefit of regeneration of places like Portrush. I think regeneration in Newcastle is a good example where we've all worked collectively in the past. With Belfast City Council, we have done likewise. We work very closely with what was the old DCAL, which is now Department of Communities, because for the most part we co-invest in a lot of the events that take place across Northern Ireland. We have a very good relationship with DAERA in terms of the Rural Development Programme, because there's a significant chunk of that money which is set aside for the development of rural tourism. And we are talking to Waterways Ireland about the potential, for example, of Blueways, which might sort of, we would work in partnership with Waterways Ireland, Budge Ireland, until in developing some of those cross-border elements where it really makes sense to do that in terms of those, you know, that particular product area.
Okay, thank you. Mervyn?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, John and Laura, for the briefing paper. I have to say the briefing paper was exceptionally helpful and well laid out and easy to understand, and not like sometimes you get briefing papers, reams and reams and reams and reams of it. It was simple and commend you.
I think what you meant to say was short and to the point.
Yeah, it was. And also I want to say a word of appreciation and thanks for what you have done in terms of promoting Northern Ireland, because I think that there's been a lot of good work has been done. I know I value very much your input into issues on the North Coast, and given yesterday the royal endorsement that we had of the North Coast, obviously all politics is local, as is all tourism, but it brings an issue which, and I was delighted that the chair was on the North Coast yesterday, and obviously the focus that there was from the Causeway right across to Limavady. But in terms of the the paper where it makes reference to the domestic element of our product, we've seen a reduction. Now, obviously, with I'm glad that there's some good news in terms of trying to interpret the recent political decisions, that obviously the issue in relation to sterling and all of that has its benefits when it comes to something like this. But in terms of how do we ensure that we get a greater spend of the domestic element, given the products that we have in Northern Ireland, given the variety and right across, not just in the North Coast, but right across Northern Ireland, how do we ensure that we can capitalise on the domestic market? That's one thing. Secondly, the other one is, you mentioned the Wild Atlantic Way, but also we have the Appalachian Trail, and there has been a whole discussion around for a good while how we link those two elements, because obviously that brings us, right across, brings us across Europe, it brings us right across into the United States, and there's been a whole discussion around how we align that with the Ulster Way and so on, and how do we see that. Finally, just a word of appreciation and thanks what you have done in regards to the dark edges. That's ongoing work. Good progress is being made, and I hope there'll be further announcements in the not too distant future in relation to them.
Okay, thank you. I'll pick up on the domestic market piece. Laura, you might want to just sort of add to that, and I'll ask you to deal with the Appalachian Way, because you'll be doing the piece around the sort of Ulster Scots heritage and how we link that in terms of exploiting that as a market opportunity. I suppose there are a number of things. I mean, in terms of the domestic market, I think many people who live here see the island of Ireland as being the domestic market, and they'll take a choice as to whether they sort of holiday north of the border, south of the border, depending upon, a range of factors. And as I said, I think exchange rate, has been a factor for us over the last couple of years. So the Republic of Ireland has been somewhat more sort of affordable, and VAT has sort of played a role in that as well. When you talk to the industry, I think one of our challenges is actually us working with the industry and trying to encourage the industry to do more for itself in terms of how we market our visitor attractions and how we market our accommodation provision in the domestic marketplace. Because I met with the Northern Ireland Hotels Federation last week about some of the challenges that we've got, and I think there was an acceptance that, if you pick up the Belfast Telegraph, the Irish News, the newsletter, Irish Times, Irish Independent, you will see 80–85% of the ads, even in our own local papers, tend to be coming from the southern marketplace. So we're now seeking to encourage the industry to look at how we deal with that. And one of the things that we want to do is look to see if we run the campaign, for example, in the Republic of Ireland, or even domestically, can we get the industry, which previously has not necessarily happened, where they co-invest with us, that if we put up X%, that they will put up Y% to meet the cost of that, to make sure that we're trying to get them to sort of invest in their own futures. We also have been engaging in conversations with the local councils, because there is an opportunity, I think, for us to collectively work with the councils in terms of councils promoting their own areas within the domestic market, and allowing us to concentrate on the Republic, and allowing the Tourism Ireland team to concentrate in the international marketplace. So I think there are a number of things that we can do. I suppose the ongoing development of experiences and how we sell those to local people is important, and the ongoing investment in terms of the capital investment that's required to make our sort of products competitive with our closest to market, homes close. Because it's easy to go to Scotland, it's easy to go to the south, easy to go to Lake District. Those are our competitor places, and we need to be able to compete with all of those.
Just on that point, Chair, just as an anecdote, like if you take, for example, the Manor House in Enniskillen, I have to say they're outstanding in terms of how they market themselves. And periodically, I'll get, if you've been there, you get an email which is just, again, simple, an offer. And I tell you, it is very, very effective. And that's a tool, obviously, that's becoming more and more, but it's a way in which it's used. There
are exceptions. I mean, I'm not saying every, like Hastings Group and others will do, do their own marketing. The Dalata Group of their own sales team in Dublin and sell, their hotels in Belfast and Derry, and do that very successfully. There is a real issue around the I suppose, the digital skill set of our industry and their ability to engage in terms of having the right type of website and how they use that to basically target the people they need to target, using direct mail, for example, which you're probably referring to, Mervyn, and how social media is used in a sort of innovative way to support their business. And I think one of our challenges and one of our priorities for this current financial year and beyond is building the capacity of the industry to basically develop those skills and exploit the opportunities that the digital platforms now provide. I mean, at this point in time, somewhere in the region about 40%, at the end of next year, 50% of all sort of tourism bookings will be carried out on a mobile phone. So we need to get onto those mobile platforms, and we need to help the industry get onto those mobile platforms, because if you're not there, you're not visible.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much indeed. And first of all, again, thank you very much indeed for setting a proper target, not a wishy-washy target, but going for $1 billion is a great scheme, and I think we fully support you in what you're trying to do, and that's where we need to be within Northern Ireland PLC. A couple of points and a question. Obviously, we're competing against VAT at 9% in the Irish Republic, particularly anything to do with the hospitality industry, which is one of the reasons why in the newspapers they're allowed to put some substantial sort of advertisements, and the rest of it is because they get it at 9%. One of the things that, bearing in mind we're now into this brave new world, we need to be thinking about improving competitiveness. I like your comments on how useful trying to get a 9% VAT rate here, on much the same we have in the Republic of Ireland, would be useful here. And secondly, as part of that conversation, what we should be doing about APD, which has been seen to be not just being anti-competitive for the business sector, but it's also anti-competitive, I imagine, for trying to attract business here as well. My third question is more about the sort of discussions about the relationship with Tourism Ireland and the promotion of Northern Ireland. We give a substantial amount of money to Tourism Ireland every year to help promote both the island of Ireland and also to a degree of that Northern Ireland. There is a perception amongst many business people here in Northern Ireland, particularly in the hospitality sector, that it's skewed in particular towards the Dublin sector. You'll see large amounts of promotion of Dublin Airport as being an avenue of entry into the island of Ireland, but we don't see the same degree of promotion for either Belfast City or particularly the great airport in my constituency, Belfast International Airport. And that is seen as being anti-competitive by quite a few people in the hospitality section and in the travel sections coming into Northern Ireland. So I'd just like your comments about both VAT and APD, and also the degree that Tourism Ireland is doing the promotion. And I declare an interest here, Mr. Chair. I've had numerous discussions in the past with Niall Gibbons, particularly about the Wild Atlantic Way. Bearing in mind the Atlantic stops at the Giant's Causeway where it reaches the North Channel. And bearing in mind the Wild Atlantic Way originally stopped in Sligo and didn't even go to Donegal, I think one of the things we should be doing is sort of making sure that if we are promoting this, it needs to be promoted on a sort of a much more sort of inclusive area. So the rest of it. And finally, the question is the issue of, and I've heard this raised quite a few times, the issue of quality hotel accommodation outside Belfast, and what we're doing to be able to look to improve the hotel stock, particularly outside the Belfast area, which tends to mean that we can't go for sort of the business tourism market, or in particular to do sort of the major conference market outside the Belfast area. I'd just like your comments on those. But once again, thanks very much indeed for what Tourism Northern Ireland's done, and well done.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I'll pick up on the VAT piece. I mean, clearly, if we had sort of parity with the Republic of Ireland, that would be very helpful. But I mean, we recognise that that's not just a debate for Northern Ireland. You know, and this might all change with Brexit as the European rules change. But as things currently stand, you know, the UK would have to take a decision that it's going to reduce its VAT rate too. So I suppose, rather than us, I mean, Colin Neal leads a campaign on behalf of the industry through Hospitality Ulster and that. I suppose we ourselves are trying to concentrate on those things that we think we can make a difference with, and that's what we would.
Could we agree it would be a help?
Sorry?
Could we agree it would be a help? Could we agree it would be a help?
It would. I mean, certainly it would be a help. There's no doubt about that. In terms of air passenger duty, I suppose, I mean, if we were looking at this from a tourism perspective, we would say anything that enhances connectivity would be beneficial. I suppose it's ultimately for others to decide in terms of the wider benefit that brings to Northern Ireland. Certainly we would see a tourism benefit, but if that's got a broader cost to the economy or to the delivery of public services, then, you know, it's above my pay grade to comment on that particular issue, and I don't want, you know, that would not be appropriate. But certainly, you know, anything that improves the likelihood of people to come onto the island of Ireland, because the air connectivity is sort of critical to that. I hear your points about Tourism Ireland. I mean, there are, I suppose, challenges that we all face in this regard. I mean, I think if life would be easy for Niall if the Wild Atlantic Way sort of went all the way around to sort of Carlingford Lough or to the north coast, and Ireland's ancient east stretched all the way up. But you know, whether or not the industry in the south would agree to encourage the leakage of what they would see as their market moving into the north is another political challenge, and one that I think, and that's again for somebody else to negotiate, not for us. I think what we try to do is recognise how things currently stand and what can we do strategically in order to make sure that we maximise the potential, hence our desire, and Laura could say a little bit more about this because she's been leading this campaign around developing that proposition which would sort of really plug that gap. In terms of how Tourism Ireland operate overseas, essentially I think Northern Ireland currently pays about 26.1% of the budget, and we get 26.1% of the visibility on their stands, on their websites, on their social media, so all of that. So it's I mean, what you get is almost proportionate to what you ultimately pay. How that then translates in terms of spend on the island, I suppose, is a more challenging issue, because connectivity is much greater into Dublin, for example, than into Belfast. If you're looking at spend coming from the United States, you know, we have got one flight per day coming from the States. You know, I think something like 19 or whatever flying into Dublin. You know, so there are other challenges, and as over the next number of weeks we have over the last couple of months and the next couple of months, we are inputting into Tourism Ireland's operating plan, because we absolutely would like to see a greater proportion of the spend being spent in Northern Ireland, i.e. the proportion on the island of Ireland. But I think it's fair to say that we recognise that the challenges lie collectively and therefore require a collective solution as to how we actually deal with that particular issue.
Do you want to comment, Laura?
Yeah, do you want me to pick up on that? I think just because, I mean, the Wild Atlantic Way and this proposition of scale has been talked about a few times. So just to put that into context, a number of years ago we did a lot of research in partnership with Tourism Ireland and Fáilte Ireland to understand why are visitors coming here, or more importantly, why are they not? So to really understand, to your point, the competitive issues for Northern Ireland and the island of Ireland. So we know more about our visitors now, those who do come and those who don't, than we've ever done before. In response to that, fundamentally, Fáilte Ireland have changed the game in the last couple of years with these three big propositions, and they're absolutely not to be underestimated in terms of the impact that they're having in the marketplace. So where you have the Wild Atlantic Way with an investment programme behind it of 100 million, that is getting cut through like nothing we have on this in the northern part. Even though I would argue that our product could potentially be better, the issue with cut through in the marketplace is we have just been unable to compete. So these three big propositions ultimately have been a game changer in the international marketplace. So as a result of that, the product that we have here is appearing weaker and fragmented when it tries to compete with those three big things. So to go back to your point, Chair, earlier, absolutely we have to maximise the benefit of those three big things in the marketplace and look for an extension of an Irish break. But that's all that's ever going to be. You know, if we are going to join up in terms of the Wild Atlantic Way, all we're really asking visitors to do is give us part of your break on the island of Ireland. So it nearly implies the better experience is elsewhere, and then give us some of your leftovers. So for us, we know we have a stronger proposition, and we know we have an opportunity with some of our products to compete in the international marketplace. So we're going through a process at the minute to look at joining all of that up. The name of the game for us at the minute in tourism, it's three things. It's connectivity, it's partnership, and it's investment. You know, so we have to make sure that we connect everything that we have, because the smaller things that, you know, like the Giant's Causeway, for example, you know, like Titanic, when it's out there in the international marketplace, it's just not cutting through in the same way these three big propositions are. So we have to join up in a smart, innovative way that visitors respond to. So our proposition will be market-led because we know what visitors want to buy. So like anything else, we have got to market that in a compelling way. So we're going through that process now, and we're going through it very much in partnership with the local authorities and also in partnership with some of our other government departments, where we know that investment, we are not the only organisation that is responsible for tourism. It has to be about partnership. It has to be about getting investment from other government departments and other agencies, because the South are investing disproportionately by comparison to what we are doing. So we are sitting on a massive opportunity with excellent product on the back of the 100 million that we've already invested. So we really need to up our game in the international marketplace if we're going to get more visitors in here, because we talked about the domestic marketplace, and that's recycling people around Northern Ireland, and that's important. That is the bread and butter for a lot of businesses here, so we've got to make sure we continue to do that. ROI, massive untapped potential, but if we can get more out of state visitors in here, that's actually more money into the economy to go around, but that requires a step change in terms of how we present ourselves in the international marketplace. So that's the project that we're working on, to be more competitive in the international marketplace.
Good. I like that.
Thank you. Kiva.
Thanks, and thank you for the presentation. As a North Coast dweller, tourism is obviously a very important sector. I just have a couple of points. I wonder if you could comment a little bit on the success of the Year in Food and Drink. For me, anyway, the perception is it has been quite successful.
Yep.
And the opportunities maybe coming out of that for food tourism. I know, for example, the Causeway Coast and Glens have a food network, and they have been building on that and doing like food tours. So there's opportunities there. The other thing, perhaps, we have heard obviously from Invest NI and about the need to address, the regional balance of the economy. Obviously, tourism can play a big part in that, and you mentioned supporting our, micro businesses and SMEs, and I suppose in some regions more so than others, tourism is that sector where there is potential for development. So I wonder if you could maybe just comment a wee bit on that.
Yeah.
And finally, the role of tourism partnerships. Do you see that is a good kind of way of engaging with private stakeholders and building relationships with local government? You mentioned like having personnel in each of the council areas.
Yeah. Just pick up Year Food and Drink. So Year Food and Drink's now 6 months old. We did some preparatory work around this in the latter part of last year. So we have a budget of, I think, a total budget for the delivery of the project of about £2.75 million. And one can't underestimate the importance of the food and drink part of the tourism experience, because of that £750 million we talked about previously, about 1/3 of that spent in food and drink. And day trippers in Northern Ireland spend about another £282 million on food and drink top of that. So it's a £370 million business. And the sense was that we had excellence in Northern Ireland and we weren't given it visibility, and this Year of Food has undoubtedly allowed us to do that. And we have worked very closely with Food NI and with, particularly with Tourism Ireland in our offices in places like London and the States and whatever, to drive that forward. And a lot of what this has been about has been basically giving visibility to that and giving visibility to Northern Ireland as a quality destination. People won't come for the food itself, but it is certainly part of the sale. So, and I think it's been recognised by, the Restaurant Association of Ireland invited me down to the Shelbourne 2 weeks ago to basically talk about how we were promoting Northern Ireland as a food destination, or ourselves in Cornwall were there, and it was like, how do we learn from what's been going on? So it's being recognised outside of Northern Ireland for what it's delivered. Our sort of objective here was, was threefold, or fourfold. One was to uplift the quality of the provision, and I think certainly the industry has bought into what it is that we're trying to do. You've got people like Niall McKenna, James Street South, who's championing a lot of this, and others alongside him. We are working with the colleges, NI and the colleges, to look at, how can we basically use this year to uplift the quality of the skills and encourage people to get into the industry. But it's been a huge success from a PR point of view. The local media have all picked it up. We've had, for the first time ever, we have a nationwide turn up from the Republic of Ireland. We have a TV3 do a weekly, series across the week, basically focusing on different chefs over the period that we've been here. We have a journalist in from right across the globe. We have got great coverage in all the high-end magazines, food magazines in Italy, France, Switzerland, the United States. We reckon that currently we have delivered, in international PR terms, somewhere in the region of about £6.3 million worth of advertising equivalent value. So i.e. if you were buying a space for people to be advertising and to get this coverage, that's what you would have had to spend to get that. And that does not take into account any of the PR value that has been generated here at home. We also have done this very much in partnership with Invest NI, because it's about trying to link together the tourism experience and the quality of the food that is exported from Northern Ireland, and we have worked very closely on that. So, for example, we had a regional presence in London. I'm trying to remember the name of the store in Piccadilly.
No,
Yeah.
not far.
Fortnum and Mason.
Fortnum and Mason.
For a week. We had royalty actually turn up at that, so basically experience the food. We get great coverage out of that. We're the only region who has ever got that sort of exposure. A lot of the major retailers have bought in, so you've got Asda, Tesco, Sainsbury's have all sort of bought into this. They're using their stores to showcase sort of artisan food, and it's given artisans the opportunity to develop new sort of export and sort of sales and marketing channels. And we've done some interesting stuff, like bringing some of the biggest sort of chefs from the biggest sort of hospitality businesses in Dubai over to experience food. So, for example, we had the chief chef from Emirates Airlines over, having dinner in the restaurants here, meeting Hannah Meats and looking to see is that sort of product that they would wish to purchase and utilise in the international marketplace. So the first 6 months have been hugely successful. I think our challenge over the next 6 months is really keeping up that momentum, looking to see how do we ensure that we get a legacy out of this, so that it's not just a one-year wonder, that we basically look to see the strengths that we get. I mean, one of the benefits from a tourism point of view is I think there are about 17 new food tours which have basically emerged as a result of that, whether that be food tours of Strangford Lough, on the Causeway, the Glens. I think there's a food tour there. You can sail around the lochs in Fermanagh and get out and go to different restaurants. Some really innovative stuff that's happening. So it's been, I think, far more successful than we ever anticipated it would be. And a really good example of how, if we work in partnership across the public, private, and the voluntary sector, we can deliver something quite significant.
And I think it taps back into the Going for Growth strategy, that is between DAERA and the Department of Economy.
Yes.
So that,
yes,
the
and
potential for that
sort
to,
of
like
part
you
of our
say,
culture being
building on the
involved in that as
legacy of
well. I'll let you come on, Laura. You can say something about the regionality piece. Yeah. But what would I say about regional tourism partnerships? They are beneficial. I think our relationship with the councils are particularly beneficial because the councils have got money to invest. They've got money to invest in product. They've got capital they can invest. They have got ERDF money and local economic development funds, which we don't have, where we can work with them to develop bespoke development programs for those micro enterprises and those SMEs. The councils are also extremely important because they manage a lot of our major visitor attractions, and they are important in terms of town centre regeneration. They manage beaches, they keep the place clean. They have a major role to play in terms of the attractiveness of Northern Ireland as a destination. The one thing I would say is what we absolutely need to avoid is competition between sub-regions. In terms of what Laura's trying to do, we're going to deliver this proposition of scale. It requires everybody to work collectively together. It's about increasing the size of the cake as opposed to competing for a bigger slice of the existing cake. And looked in detail at how Fáilte Ireland is about making sure that that engagement is taking place and that buy-in has happened really from Kinsale all the way, round to up into Donegal. So I also think we need to eliminate duplication. And we've got limited resources, and I do think there are areas where we could do things better in a more effective way. If I take this Belfast just as an example, we manage a website, they manage a website, they run offers, we run offers, and there's no reason why that can't be done collectively, and no reason why we can't free up resources to do more campaigns to get those people into Belfast, as opposed to having that sort of anchored in overheads, for want of a better word. But Laura's the one who's been basically driving most of that work.
I think over the review of public administration has presented us with a massive opportunity, and certainly the chair earlier on, whenever he opened up, talked about the fragmentation and just how much a crowded pitch tourism has been over the last number of years. Back to what I said earlier on about the Fáilte Ireland model, we can't afford that going forward. So what we have done as of the 1st of April last year was ensure that every single local authority had got a regional manager that they were able to work to. We also made the offer to co-fund local tourism strategies, which we have done now for 6, and we're assuming that the other 5 will be uplifting that offer in due course. But one of the important things to really understand is that visitors don't see council boundaries. They don't, and to try and market on a council by council basis in the out-of-state market is compounding the problem we already have. Fáilte Ireland have moved away from that model, and absolutely we don't want to start that model, if you like, and that's one of the things that we have been working very closely with the local councils, is to really say, how do we extract the products and the experiences from your council area that visitors want to buy and join them up on a Northern Ireland wide basis so that we can compete in the international marketplace. What I would say in that context then, the model has been good because this destination management model has gone through multiple iterations over the last number of years. We have set up private sector networks, informal collaborations with businesses, and there are 4 new clusters, for example, that have been set up along the Causeway coastal route where businesses have been directly engaged. Businesses have been working really effectively in terms of submitting new offers to the international marketplace, and as a result of our engagement directly with businesses, there's 47 new offers that are available online for visitors to buy, and that has been an informal collaboration direct with business. That model works, and that model has worked in terms of clusters working together in big picture context, not aligned to council boundaries. So we are working very much on a council by council basis. We're co-funding strategies. We have MOUs in place with all the councils, but it's designed to pull out those products and experiences that visitors want to buy and sell them in a way that meets the needs of visitors. So it's market-led rather than council-led, if you like, in terms of the marketing approach. And I think in terms of making this bigger idea, this big proposition work, that's a model that we would like to see going forward. So we wouldn't be supporting, a notion of 11 new destination management or regional tourism partnerships coming up, because it'll talk to the problem John talked about, which is just regional competitiveness, and that won't work for us in terms of the bigger goal, which is to grow out-of-state tourism to $1 billion.
We've got a few more members to go through at the moment. Sinead?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Laura and John, for your contribution so far. I take your point, Laura, about competing, but there's no doubt in my mind that local councils are going to be protective of their area, and if they see the bigger picture not being proportionately distributed to include them, and I will pull out the South Down hat here because I feel very lonely when I read through some of the presentation here, that there are areas and pockets of Northern Ireland. And it surprised me somewhat when I came to this House first. A lot of people claimed the title of having the most beautiful constituency, when we all know, of course, that is South Down.
No, South Antrim, Sinead.
South Down. I did humour people in along that. But on a serious note, when we look at, I take also your point about budget, you're not competing, and you're not going to be competing anyway soon with the South in terms of what offer you have in front of you. But there are things, and I'm really thinking of this new language we're referring to, of coming out of silos and departments working together. And there are opportunities whereby there's much more intelligence on who the potential tourist is and what they need, and this whole new concept of activity tourism, And when I look at places like the Mournes and Rostrevor and that, you know, you have a lot of hiking opportunities, walking, and that appears to be a very new trend, which thankfully fits very well to our offer. And I also would go further, Lauren, saying that, you know, you referred to the southern offer possibly not being as good, but being better marketed, and I would concur with that. I think you're absolutely right. I do think it's very much not able to promote ourselves as we would like to, but our offer certainly stacks up in terms of, you know, credibility. But what I would ask then, in terms of looking out at other departments, are you trying to use your energies and efforts to recognise things such as the Narrow Water Bridge project, which is a physical way of actually taking those tourists from the coolies over into Warren Point, and like you say, that offer in then being encouraged to travel throughout the north? Things like that on tourism, how active are you on that? And there were other things like licensing laws, which are going to be, you know, really have an impact on what we're able to offer. So I just want to know what your connection with other departments has been so far, or what you anticipate it will be, and how active or how able are you, given your limited resources, to look at such things as that?
Well, I'll speak at sort of at a sort of, let's say, a EFT level, and I'll let Laura get into the detail of that. I would like to think that the new approach which is being taken to the delivery of the programme for government will be helpful in this regard. Because if we have got overarching outcomes that we wish to achieve, and we're taking that outcomes approach, I would like to think that will encourage all of us to work more collectively together. In saying that, we do have working relationships, and we have got formal MOUs with a whole range of people, and we have over the years worked with people like the Forestry Service and the National Trust and others, and we are working very closely with Newry and Mourne Down Council in terms of the development of their strategy. I would say, you know, the relationship there is extremely good. You know, we're working hand in glove in that. There are undoubtedly opportunities, you know, with the national park, with the parks and the national parks, the forest parks. I do think a national park is still a major opportunity that we should never forget. We shouldn't forget about. But the parks, the National Trust, which owns, you know, sort of Slieve Donard, Murlough Bay, you know, the attributes we have around Castle, you know, Castle Ward and
Crawfordsburn.
And Crawfordsburn. Well, you know, again, it's not just about South Down, it's about South Down and beyond. It's about how that all links up into Belfast and beyond, you know, coming back to the point that Laura was making.
Sorry, but I'd also like that link, if you like,
yeah.
that could
the issue is making
those touch points.
I think one of the things that we perhaps haven't done in the past is we haven't been as forensic in terms of the needs of the visitor. So what we are looking at is who are the potential visitors, what opportunities do they present, and then we need to look at what sort of investment do we need to make that attractive. I suppose our view would be, and I remember sitting down with Margaret Ritchie and a number of people in the tourism industry in South Down, and they said, well, we are, you know, unique. And I asked the question, well, why are you unique? Well, we've got the mountains and we've got the sea. The whole of Ireland has got mountains and it's got the sea. So how do we differ in that sense? And we believe that something needs to be done almost to create a spark, you know, something that is an attractor into the Mournes area. And we are talking to the council and the National Trust and others, and you may be aware of what that might look like. But, you know, certainly we think it needs to be differentiated. I interestingly had a conversation with Sean Quinn about this in terms of activity tourism, you know, because I see Dublin as a potential market for, you know, as a big market for South Down if we can attract people up. He tells me they have a challenge getting people actually into Wicklow, and it's right on their doorstep. So, you know, we do need to do something that is going to basically provide standout in the Mournes and drag people up. But undoubtedly it's got potential. That's why we've got somebody down there full time working with the council, and that's why we're trying to develop this proposition of scale so that, you know, we maximise the potential that exists. I think it's also, you've made the point about people looking sub-regionally and even distribution. It's not unlike foreign direct investment. You know, certain places are going to be more attractive to tourists than others. You know, that's the way it is. You know, you will go on holiday and you will decide to go to certain places and you will decide not to go to others. So we will not see an equal distribution of visitors right across the piece. And what we need to do is to work with Invest and look to see where does tourism provide the best potential, where does the FDI provide the best potential, where does the development of the manufacturing sector, for example, provide the best. So we can't look at tourism outside of that broader context of, you know, all of the other economic development activity that Invest and the department are involved in. We're part of that, and we need to be part of that sort of regional sort of spread. But we need to recognise that, you know, in the tourist eyes, not everywhere is necessarily equal, and we need to basically always consider what the visitor wants, because we could spend piles of money on the wrong product in the wrong area and people just won't go. So that's, you know, I'm only sort of, I don't want to say a health warning, but it's reality. You know, that's the context that we're working within.
Sinead, do you want to follow up?
Yeah, I understand your point there in terms of, you know, there will be bigger pockets, but my reference is those potential tourists are looking at the offer that is presented to them.
Yeah.
And I would like to see equality in that, a regional balance in what the offer is, because people will respond to what the offer is. If they're promoting Belfast over and above everything else, people will flock to Belfast. So it's about making sure that all areas are equally sold and presented, you know, in a marketing way.
And I understand that. What I would say is, in terms of how we sell, I mean, most of our sales work is done through our website. There's equal visibility of every part of Northern Ireland on our website. When we do our promotions in the south, it's normally done through campaigns. We invite every part and every business in Northern Ireland to participate within those. So we don't discriminate in any way in terms of how we present opportunities or platforms. It's a little bit like, you know, what Jeremy was saying in terms of how they, you know, they work in that regard. You know, we give everybody the opportunity to get visibility. What we probably need to do is, as I said, we need to develop more product in certain areas to attract more people into them and make them more attractive in that sense.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Just before we ask the other members to speak, we're sort of progressing on sort of time-wise at the moment. If we could keep our remarks slightly shorter. Thank you, Gordon.
I'm not going to take that as if it was directly.
No, well, I didn't even suggest it
towards me.
The shoe fits.
So I will be brief, and I'm also going to be unashamedly very parochial as well, because I am unapologetic East Antrim. I am unapologetic in terms of believing that there's huge potential in that area. And I'm just wondering what actions that, you know, you talk about product development. I believe we now have a fantastic in East Antrim, which is the Gobbins. And I think it has an absolutely fantastic potential in terms of bringing more visitors there. And we've already seen with the figures over the last number of weeks, a very high proportion are actually out-of-state visitors as well, which is what we want to see. I want to see people come into East Antrim, but I'd love them to stay there for the night as well and eat there, because that's where the real progress is there in terms of the money, I suppose, for what we're trying to do. So how has, and you know, it's a substantial project and it is drawing in the visitors, so what work has Tourism NI done, will Tourism NI do to make sure that this is properly marketed to bring tourists into that area? And perhaps are you aware of the other great products we have in that area, Macramorn, not only Game of Thrones area, but also the new cycling and diving centre that's going to be there, the Antrim Coast Road. I'm obviously in Mid and East Antrim Borough Council, but that extends up into Causeway, Coast and Glens. That's why you need to not just market it by council area, as you've said, and the new moves that have been taking place to move the Carrickfergus Castle away from being in the control of NIEA, a joint partnership with Mid and East Antrim. Huge potential the whole way up East Antrim, so the chairman has warned me to be brief, but I do want to make sure that East Antrim has its place and that it's promoted and marketed.
We agree.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much indeed. Could I call Mr. Chambers, please?
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. I'll go through this as quickly as possible, and if our guests want to come back to me rather than answer today, I'm happy enough for that. Just want to say that congratulate the tourism industry in Northern Ireland. I think for many years it was the Cinderella of the local economy, and I think in some people's eyes it maybe still is the Cinderella, but I'm glad that people are, over recent years, have awakened to the potential to the economy. Quick question about cruise ships. I know that there's a lot of them coming into Belfast. Harbour commissioners are making a big investment in new docking facilities and stuff. I'm just wondering about it. Are there huge direct economic benefits of those cruise ships coming in, or are they really just, is the real benefit that they're a taster for the people who come in for a one-day trip, that they may want to come back for a fortnight and bring more of their family? So that issue. In terms of the Tourism Ireland announced some very healthy increases in visitor figures for the first 3 months of this year. I'm just wondering, we have touched on it about trying to get them up into the north. I'm just wondering, in that 3-month period, did we echo any of that or mirror any of that increase? I appreciate there's more work to do there. Very encouraged to hear about 90 projects with local government. I think that's to be encouraged as well, and that will bear fruit. Question about average bed occupancy rates in local hotels, and are we seeing year-on-year increases? Is there sufficient capacity at the moment in the hotel sector, or are there opportunities for developers to develop new hotels? Also, Laura mentioned about the short breaks in the domestic market being bread and butter, so I'm glad that we do put resources towards that, because, yeah, it is bread and butter. And just finally, just if you could confirm, you mentioned the figure, and not repeat it in case I got it wrong, I'll seek clarification. You said that we had lost some marketing budget that we attract from Europe. I wonder if you could confirm that figure for me, John. Thank you.
But 2 million.
2 million.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Was that figure? In terms of statistics, we get our statistics from NISRA. Typically, they come out about 2 months later than the statistics from the south. So, I think at the end of May, we got the statistics for December 2015. Which gives its own challenges in terms of how you respond. In terms of cruise ships, I think there's about 75,000 people expected to arrive. The benefits are both, as you say. There are direct benefits. A lot of those people will fill buses and take day trips to other parts of Northern Ireland. So about a third stays in Belfast, a third will travel outside of Belfast, and a third don't get off the boat because they get everything for free when they're on it. So part of the challenge is making sure we get more people off the boats. Hard Hastings describes it as people who come with their beds on their backs. But it is, and there's something like 25%, I think, is the average stat, that people who take a cruise to a certain location typically will visit that a second time. So it's important as an indirect sort of promotional activity for what we do. I can't read my own writing here. Sorry?
Don't be picky on that.
On
the cruise ships.
You could.
Because I think, back to sort of what John is saying there about the cruise ships, and it links back to what Gordon had said earlier on, we are trying to encourage people to stop, stay and spend, and that is almost the antithesis, if you like, of the cruise ship model, where it's great that they come in, but they jump on a bus, they go to the Stones, they go back, so they don't stop at the Gobbins, potentially, you know. So we need to increase the overnights and the dwell time here, and that is exactly what we're trying to do along the Causeway Coast Route. The Gobbins project was a game changer for that. It's a reason to stop, and that's why we're working with businesses to try and increase the dwell time in each area. So cruise ships, absolutely, it's great, because it's back to the image and the reputation of Northern Ireland in terms of, you know, the ability to attract that type of business. But if we're in the business of stop, stay and spend, it's a difficult market to try and encourage to do that, because they come with their bed, they jump on a boat, and that's it. So we are very much trying to get that occupancy figure that you talked about up, and there's absolutely no doubt that there will be capacity in the market for new developments of the right type of hotel in the right areas for the right reasons, for the right visitors. So it's definitely something in terms of where we're trying to go to attract more out-of-state visitors that we would be looking to encourage.
Are occupancy rates at the moment fairly healthy?
They are. I mean, Belfast are at record levels. We believe that there's potential for hotel development outside of Belfast as well as in Belfast, but it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. I mean, typically what we've got is attracting tour operators without the hotels is a challenge. and getting the hotels to sort of people to invest in hotels without being able to demonstrate that tour operators are there. The challenge, one of our conundrums is around how do we work with InvestNI, who currently have the responsibility for supporting the development of the accommodation sector, work towards delivering that. And if we're going to deliver on our £1 billion spend, as Laura said, we need people staying here and we need them staying longer. We need somewhere for them to stay. If we don't have the accommodation, those targets won't be met. So we need to look to see how we can actually drive further growth in that accommodation sector. Albeit the market, the demand might not be there now, but we would like to think if we grow, it will be there. So it's a challenge that we need to overcome in that respect.
Okay. Just say in conclusion, over recent years, I've seen it firsthand, the passion that you people bring to your work, and it's appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Alan. Gordon?
Thanks, Chair. I think most of it has been covered. On the hotels, places like Northdown are competing with Belfast, and we are trying to get a new hotel in Bangor, and it hopefully will come through. But we're still competing, and it is a big issue, and we're told, I understand, there's about 7 or 8 new hotels planned for Belfast, which is obviously huge capacity, over and above what already exists. So the competition is getting stronger for areas like Ards and Northdown, to be competitive. And people obviously are attracted to the city, but it's obviously very heavily promoted against areas like Ards and Northdown. So, the B&B market, for example, has declined dramatically in places like Bangor because people are attracted to the hotels in Belfast. So the issue about accommodation is a good one. We need a focus on accommodation and alternative accommodation. What has been done on that?
Okay. Well, just pick up on the health. I mean, there's somewhere in the region, like 1,800 beds being projected in terms of hotel growth in Belfast.
That's huge.
It's huge, but it is for the most part being driven by the investment in Waterfront Hall and the potential that has gives for major conferences. We have never had that potential before because we just never had the facilities to do it, and we do have those now. I think one of our key sort of objectives beyond that is how do we then encourage those people who come on conferences come back, or when they're here to bring their partners, or when they're here to stay a couple of extra days and explore beyond Belfast. And that's a debate that needs to be had. I would like us to work with the other accommodation providers, and I have a team of people who are involved in this, but there are opportunities, I think, which are untapped through, channels like Airbnb, to give people access to the marketplace. The day that people drive past a B&B and decide to stop are gone. And B&Bs have got to differentiate themselves. Nobody wants to just turn up in somebody's house and stay in one of their rooms. We have got some B&Bs who are absolutely fabulous at what they do. They give people a real experience of what it's like to live in Northern Ireland. So they will. You bake your own breakfast, using sort of Northern Ireland products.
I wouldn't go that far.
Bread. But that is what people pay. They will pay a premium for that.
They want the authentic experience.
They want that experience. And that is what people want to buy. And, that's a lot of our food tourism stuff is around that sort of, that experience. I think we also are working with Northdown and Ards Borough Council to look at how do we exploit that. I suppose Bangor isn't going to compete with Belfast in terms of, as a nighttime economy or a city break, but there's potential, we would argue, around places like Strangford Lough, and how do we develop a product around that people can then exploit. And I suppose typically what will happen is, hotel rates in Belfast, because occupancy levels are high, the rates are higher, and therefore people who are maybe looking for, something which is a better bargain, for want of a better word, might be prepared to stay further outside of Belfast. So typically what happens, it spreads out.
No, more quality. Yeah. Okay, the other point I wanted to make was about event tourism. We've had some very good events and major events and, other smaller events, and I think it's important that we continue to support them. How do you rate event tourism in relation to the overall product that you're working on?
Events are important on, and I would argue on 3 levels. I mean, and I suppose we support events at 3 levels. We support what we call global events. So the Open Championship, for example, is a global event because it's good, gives Northern Ireland global coverage. The World Cup would be a global event. So those big events are important, in terms of they deliver a direct economic benefit, but a very significant indirect economic benefit in terms of huge PR, huge reach, and change the perceptions and help change the perceptions of Northern Ireland. And undoubtedly things like the MTV Music Awards, the Irish Open, the Giro have significantly changed the perception of the place. I think we now have, 4 times quadrupled the numbers of visitors coming from Italy since the Giro. So one can't underestimate the benefit, I would say, that something like the Open come to Northern Ireland will bring. Certainly South Down saw a huge benefit from the Irish Royal County Down, but presented hugely positive images of Northern Ireland right across
No, that is right.
the Sky Network. So they're important. We also support, I think, about 14. I wouldn't want to be held to that number, but I think it's, I do have the number here, but it's around 13 international events. So those are events like Belfast International Arts Festival at Festival of Queens, FELA, the Northwest 200, Circuit of Ireland, those sorts of events that we have supported, which are Indigenous Northern Ireland events, which we see as potentially having the capacity to attract people to come to Northern Ireland in their own right because that event is taking place. And we then spend a significant amount of money in supporting events at a local level, and typically we do that, and that's sort of co-funded by the councils, and I think it's 55 or something events of that nature that we support this year. In terms of our overall objective though, I think we need to look at events in the broader context. If we want to deliver against that £1 billion sales, we need to look and examine how do we best spend our £19 million a year to deliver on that billion. I would argue that £19 million won't deliver that billion, but
how much do you think you would need?
The department's economists are looking at, they're doing some projection work to see what that might look like. I wouldn't want to come out with a figure because it's, it would be off the top of my head at this point. I would want some evidence to support it, but happy to come back with what that figure might look like.
It's an interesting point because, as you've probably heard already today, we're moving into a brave new world.
Yes.
And one of the things we do need to do is where we can promote Northern Ireland, and promote Northern Ireland well. And you're a best example of that, and you're doing well. So we need to reinforce success, not reinforce failure.
Currently, events account for 40% of our budget.
40%?
40%.
Close on 40%. It's 7 million out of 19. So the maths and that's, haven't sort of worked it out in my head, but it's somewhere around 40%. I've always got to calculate.
Are there major events planned then?
That would include, contributions to major events. So we will not pay for the Open all in 1 year. That will, so make sure there's no big, lumpy payments. We will pay that, over a period of 4 years in the lead up to that. But I suppose one has to ask the question, if, for example, we spend 7 times the amount of money on events that we spend on supporting industry development, our events budget is 7 times greater than our marketing spend in the south. So, when you look at it in that context, there's an issue around have we get the right balance. I'm not underestimating the impact that they have. They're important, but are they as important or more important than some of the other things which we are perhaps not spending the amount of money that we possibly should be spending on?
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Just before I thank you and Laura for your excellent presentation and promotion to the committee. One of the questions I was going to ask, there was a question earlier on that had been asked about sort of the website and website design and apps. I know Fáilte Ireland have worked very closely with the ITs in the IT sector, with the Institutes of Technology. Are we doing anything similar in Northern Ireland with the universities? Bearing in mind we've got some of the best app designers anywhere in the world based here in Northern Ireland.
We are in the process of developing a programme to do that, and certainly we would see the colleges, the universities, and even working in partnership with some of our, really leading edge IT companies who may be prepared to support on the basis of, corporate social responsibility. I mean, we've had conversations with some people who are sort of saying we would like to make a contribution to that, not necessarily for commercial reasons, but because we think we can help and we're keen to help, and we would want to explore that as well.
Okay, on behalf of the committee, once you get the app up and running, please let us all have a method of getting on it, and we will definitely spread the message far and wide, selling Northern Ireland. But John, Laura, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed for your evidence. Thank you.
John, thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Move on to agenda item 11.
Short there, wee bit. Appreciate it.
Members, moving into agenda item 11, SR 2016 number 243, the Industrial Training Levy Construction Industry Order in Northern Ireland 2016. If we could refer to your pack, I think it's the clerk's memo is at page 66 of the pack. The explanatory memorandum is on page 68 of the pack, and the SR itself is on page 70 of the pack. We're advising the members that the rule is subject to negative resolution, and that the committee discussed this rule at SL1 stage on the 15th of June 2016, and the members were then content with the policy implications set out, and the rule will come into operation on the 31st of August 2016. That the examiner statutory rules is not yet reported on this rule, so members will be agreeing to the legislation subject to the examiner statutory rules report. Any issues? Okay.
No, agreed.
Agreed. Okay. As we're content, the Committee for the Economy has considered SR 2016 number 243, the Industrial Training Construction Industry Order Northern Ireland 2016, and has no objection to the rules subject to the Examiner's Statutory Rules report. Move on to agenda item number 6. I need to declare an interest in this because I had a briefing from Dalriadan Gold Mining yesterday along with other members of my party. I just want to have that referred in the notes, please. Agenda item 6, Departmental Result Briefing, Mineral Prospecting Licence to Dalriadan Gold Limited. The referring members to the briefing at page 132. The departmental briefing advised the committee that a further 2 mineral processing licences have been granted to Dalriadan Gold. Currently, Dalriadan have a further 4 licences. These 2 further applications cover Claudy, which includes the Causeway Coast, the Glens, Derry/Londonderry City and Strabane council areas, and Dungiven, which includes the Causeway Coast, Glens, Derry/Londonderry, Strabane and Mid-Ulster council areas. Dalriadan considers both areas as prospective for precious and base metals. Minerals and Petroleum Branch and the Geological Survey of Northern Ireland have considered the applications and consulted with the relevant departments and public bodies. The public has also been invited to make representations. The department issued licences to the company, and these have been executed by the company and now will be executed by the department. The department has stated that the licences are being furnished with a set of guidelines to address, when required, issues in the representations made to this company. Members, are we content to note, and do we wish to ask of the department for any further details on these issues and any other further representations?
We're all agreed.
All agreed.
Okay, it doesn't mean you're getting gold now. More to the want.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Lots of gold in them there, South Antrim Hills. Not for the minutes. Moving on to item 7 from Matters Arising. Refer members to the Matters Arising Index at page 135. Any issues?
Nope.
Okay. Second, report of the Examiner's Statutory Rules. Advise members that the ESR has reported on 2016-242, the Posted Workers Enforcement of Employment Rights Regulation Northern Ireland 216. I'll inform you that the ESR has reported that the posted workers, that legislation, which is subject to negative resolution, was led in breach of the 21-day rule. The Department has apologised and expressed regret at the breach. The Department has advised the ESR that the GB equivalent regulations were not led until the 27th of April 2016, and the Department did not wish to make Northern Ireland regulations ahead of GB, as the Department for BES were advising they could be subject to change. The Department does, however, expect to be able to make regulations operative by 18th of June, the transposition date. which is passed. Here we go again. And also that the renewable obligations closure number 2, Order Northern Ireland 2016, was approved by the ASR and, as members are aware, was affirmed by the Assembly on Monday. Are they content to note the items on the index?
Agreed.
Agreed. Moving on to item 8, correspondence. Refer the members to the correspondence index on page 160, the Departmental Action Plan for Programme for Government. Refer members to the correspondence from the Committee for the Executive Office at page 167. Members will note from the timetable that each department is to have developed an action plan by the end of August 2016. Ask members of the content to ask for a copy of the department's action plan in advance of our strategic planning meeting, which is to be held on the 7th September 2016.
Agreed.
And on behalf of the committee, I will ensure that this actually does happen on time. Okay. Informal consultation on draft rules amending the insolvency rules Northern Ireland 1991. The principal rules. Refer members to the correspondence from the Minister at page 47 of the table papers. The Minister has advised the committee on the outcome of the informal targeted consultation that ran from the 26th of February this year until the 8th of April this year. The responsibility for insolvency policy lies with the Department. The Department of Justice is responsible for making the rules. Therefore, though the rules will initially be considered by the Justice Committee, that committee may decide to consult with this committee. The amendment rules are intended to help modernise the insolvency process, reduce costs and allow more cost-effective delivery in insolvency proceedings. The rules are linked to similar changes in the Insolvency Amendment Act Northern Ireland 2016. They also make changes to allow details of remuneration and expenses to be disclosed with regular progress reports, alongside a new right for creditors to request fuller particulars of fees and to challenge amounts charged. The rules introduce a new requirement for practitioners to produce an estimate of fees and expenses to all creditors, and the basis for remuneration should be time cost. 2 responses were received. Companies House is content with the overall proposal of the rules. The Northern Ireland Courts and Tribunal Service has observed that an electronic working scheme for insolvency applications within the Royal Courts of Justice will not be possible at this time. This does not affect the bulk of electronic communication within the rules, and the draft rules will be amended to take this into account. Members, are we content to note at this stage?
Agreed.
Okay. Moving on to gas designation order, Northern Ireland 2016. I refer the members to the correspondence from the Department, page 49 of the table papers, informing the committee that the Department has published a public notice regarding plans to make and lay a designation order under powers conferred by Article 59 of the Energy Northern Ireland Order 2003. The proposed designation order will provide for the high-pressure transmission section of the new gas pipeline between Maydown and Strabane to be designated for the purpose of common transmission tariff. This means that the cost of constructing and operating the pipeline will be added to the postalised pot and recovered from all gas consumers across Northern Ireland, both business and domestic, over a 40-year period through the common transmission tariff with gas bills. Comments have been invited by the 5th of August. Are we content to note at this stage?
Agreed.
Agreed. Ask members to be content with suggested action for the remaining items on the index.
Agreed.
Agreed. Investment Strategy Report from Northern Ireland Investing Activity Report, Northern Ireland Renewable Industry Group, Springvale Learning and the Northern Ireland Local Government Association. Item 9, any other business? The committee has received no additional items of business in advance, and other members, do you have any other issues you would wish to raise in the committee?
Chair, could I just maybe, I'm not sure that this is the appropriate place to do it, but I'm just conscious of events in Istanbul and that this House won't be meeting, and I wonder if this committee just wants to register our thoughts and prayers with people there at the moment.
Thank you very much indeed, Sinead, and I think this committee does very much indeed send our sort of thoughts to the people of Turkey in this very trying circumstances. And bearing in mind in this very uncertain international era at the moment, regrettably this may not be the last incident, but our thoughts and prayers are indeed with the people of Turkey and those families who have been affected. Thank you very much indeed. Item 10, date and time of the next meeting. The committee's strategic planning and first meeting will be held on the 7th September at Armagh City Hotel. Details we've discussed already beforehand, and we'll be holding stakeholder dinner that evening. Members of the committee, can you permission to adjourn the meeting? Thank you very much indeed.
29. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room.